There's this big story that's it's been going around for a little bit. People have been talking about it for some weeks. It's that houses are becoming impossible to buy. But there's something strange about the story. And without getting a bit too conspiratorial, one fact is that pension funds and Wall Street and big investment firms with international interests are buying up houses at massive amounts above cost. Somebody will say, hey, I'm going to sell my house for, $200K, and they'll be like, we'll give you $250. Pricing out any middle class person from the market. Houses, it's a very direct and simple way that middle class people transfer wealth to their kids. You buy a house, you get old, you die, your kids inherit that house. Now it's going to be the middle class are permanent renters because all of these big firms are buying up houses like crazy. And maybe it's a good money making opportunity for these Federal Reserve backed institutions. But at the same time, we're getting these stories where they're saying millennials regret buying their houses and middle class people don't want to buy houses anymore. And I'm like, why are there all these articles coming out claiming people don't want to own houses? At the same time, the biggest investment firms are buying houses. That just seems kind of odd to me. At the very least, it's going to result in middle class people not owning property, not owning wealth, squandering what little wealth they have inadvertently, and massive Wall Street companies or, whatever, owning everything. Some people are saying outright, this is just part of the Great Reset. You will own nothing and you will be happy. 10 years from now, 20 years from now, the next generation, they won't have things. There's a lot to go through. We'll break this down. Plus a bunch of other stories. There's apparently a story come out saying they weren't even selling bats at the Wuhan wet market. Anthony Fauci says, I am science, and got really mad on TV. So joining us today is we got Jack Posobiec.
Hey, Jack Posobiec, Senior Editor, Human Events. Welcome back, author of the new book, Antifa Stories Inside the Black. Go to antifabook.com and check it out. Filling in for Jack Murphy. I know a lot of people were expecting another Jack this evening. Jack couldn't be here today and asked me to cover for him as the official Wednesday Jack. So
but you got to do it in the official anchor, Jack Murphy has the night off. I will be filling in.
Ladies and gentlemen, tonight Jack Murphy has the night off. I will be playing the role of Jack Murphy, though with a slightly less conspicuous beard.
We got Seamus.
Got Seamus over here. We don't have the Illinois boys tonight, unfortunately, but I'm happy to sit here with the other Jack, and we will be pouring out an old style for our fallen brother.
An old style.
That's right.
Ian's chilling with the electroplasma ball.
Someone asked in the chat, ask and ye shall receive.
There you go.
Why isn't Ian sitting at the plasma ball? Electricity.
Wait, so they said that in the chat before they could see Ian.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we're talking about collective memory.
Is this room bugged?
Something is.
No, they were asking that he do it.
They
were like, can we have Ian sit by the plasma ball? It makes him look cool.
He was already here.
They know.
We were like, I'm not doing it because you asked, dude. I'm doing it
because
I want to.
They're watching. We got Lydia.
I am also here in the corner pushing buttons for these guys. I request that they not argue with each other too much, but we'll see what happens.
Can we argue with you?
Yeah, sure you can.
Most of them are ganging up on
Yeah,
you.
we definitely will.
We'll just argue with a straw man of the left. We'll pretend like there's a leftist there, and we'll give only the worst arguments from their side.
Possible.
I'll be the straw
Just
man.
be really
How about
easy.
Ian? Ian, just be
you
as
just
liberal
play
as
the
you
role.
can.
Say the worst
bring
leftist
any
talking
fire.
points so we can pretend like we're all smart.
Want to help everyone.
That's right.
I got to add, so our internet got struck by lightning.
Oof.
And I guess one of the boxes downstairs, like one of our network boxes, got fried by it. So we're, I think it's working. I don't know if the internet cuts out. I was watching Loki earlier. The internet just shut off, and I was so mad.
Oh,
Man.
It's like I'm in the middle of watching Loki, man.
Dare you?
So that wasn't like Thor doing like a whole like.
was it?
He's like, I don't want you watching this.
Propaganda.
Never again.
Well, we'll get serious. Before we get started, head over to timcast.com. Become a member by clicking that big old members only button, and then you will get access to the exclusive members only area. I can only assume that tonight's members only exclusive will be a hoot because we got Jack, Seamus, me, Ian, Lydia, everybody's here, so it'll be a loud and raucous conversation, I suppose, talking about the things that YouTube typically doesn't want us to talk about.
Yeah.
And when you become a member, you don't just get these amazing segments, which you don't want to miss. You're actually helping fund the expansion of our mission. So we've got a newsroom launching hopefully in the next week or two. I don't have an exact date yet. It's going to be particularly rudimentary to start, but we're going to start bringing on journalists immediately and expanding. And then we're going to have our own news operation, fact-checking these lying fake news journalists and putting out the real news. And it's going to be very, very precise and academic, and we are going to have like one of the most rigorous fact-checking operations. We're actually trying to get another, so we're going to hire fact-checkers, then we're going to hire a fact-checker to fact-check us and have them somewhere like 20 miles away so they never interact with anyone here. Then they read the articles, go through them, and we do that to try and filter framing properly. So if everyone's hanging out and talking about everything, and they're like, that's Joe Biden admitting he's a liar. Then someone 20 miles away doesn't talk to us, hears it and says, I don't think he's saying he's a liar. I think he's saying this. And then we can also try and make sure we're doing proper framing and stuff. So become a member. Let's talk about this tweet from Jack Posobiec. This guy, Jack Posobiec, antifabook.com. He's got some nerve. He said this should be illegal in all 50 states and punishable by federal prison time. What was he referring to? It's a Twitter thread where Cultural Husbandry notes BlackRock is buying every single family house they can find, paying 20 to 50% above asking price and outbidding normal home buyers. Why are corporations, pension funds, and property investments groups buying entire neighborhoods? Well, he goes on to say it's basically the Great Reset. The middle class uses home ownership, land ownership, to transfer wealth to their children. But what happens when during a Great Reset, during a pandemic, there's a great reset, as it were, of people's jobs, of businesses. Everybody gets knocked out of the playing field, sort of levels a lot of people out. Their businesses are closed. Family businesses, these are some of the most horrifying stories. Companies that have been around for like 100 years, gone overnight. Now these people are going to become renters. Many moved. They want to buy houses. It's not that hard to buy a house. People think it is. But all of a sudden, you find this house, you're on Zillow.com and you're flicking and you're like, man, this is so cool. Look at this house. And then you call the agent and he says, oof, just sold for $50K above asking. You're like, how am I supposed to compete with that as a regular person? How are millennials supposed to build wealth when these companies are coming in and buying up all this property?
Yeah, I mean, they're not. I wish that Jack fellow were here so we could have a conversation with him on his perspective on the matter. But I think that what is happening is terrible. I'm generally a fan of the free market, but part of why this was possible was because the government came down and they shut down the government came in and they shut down the entire economy for months, and then they also printed a bunch of money, inflating the dollar. And so for your average person, given the savings they had prior, it's going to be much more difficult for them to afford a house, and these massive companies are going to be able to. So it's a consolidation of wealth, the likes of which I predicted would occur as a result of this bailout and as a result of the shutdown, and it has. And the fact is, people who don't own property are much easier to control.
And check this out. You can't even build a house now. So this was reported back in April. It's about 40 grand more to build a house today because of the skyrocketing lumber and steel prices, which have only gone higher. So imagine this. It's July of last year. You got a few $1,000s in savings, and you're like, I got enough to put down on buying a house. Not anymore, you don't. Maybe you were like, okay, I saved up enough to actually get a loan for a new construction. Not anymore, you don't. That new contract is way too expensive. So what happens? Not only has it become harder because of inflation and skyrocketing materials prices, you finally are like, well, I have enough. I've saved enough. I've overcome these challenges. And then, sorry, BlackRock outbid you by 25%.
And you know, going off what Seamus
So Jack is here.
And turns out the guy is here. Yeah, you're absolutely right, though. This was a situation where the government said, and you see Fannie Mae deciding to want to do this, to say, look, all of these people went underwater in their, we called it, remember, the toxic subprime loans and the mortgages, and people were buying houses that they couldn't afford, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, we know how that started. We know who the people who were responsible for it. But we live in this strange system where the same people who are called upon to fix it are actually the ones who created the problem in the first place.
Isn't that how it goes?
So who do they turn to? Oh, themselves. Who could solve this problem? We can. We'll buy it ourselves. And the one that he actually doesn't mention in the thread, but I would throw out there, it's just absolutely huge. And you see so many wealthy Chinese families coming in, Chinese elites, CCP elites, that know that their money is, if it's in a Chinese bank and you've run afoul of the party, if you become the new persona non grata, right? Xi Jinping or whoever it is in the Politburo can reach right in and snag that from you. They're using it as tax havens. They're using it as tax shelters. They're getting out of it. And they know, by the way, that the market is just super hot right now. So it actually is, in a financial sense, a very fantastic investment, but it's the financialization of what is supposed to be and has traditionally been this wealth ownership, this wealth generation for middle class, for working class families, that now is being completely turned into the next commodities market. You don't have landlords anymore. You've got some guy who's owning it on Wall Street. They've set up like a front company to manage the whole thing, right? So it's not like it's not like one guy, I flipped a couple of houses and now I've got like 10. I had a cousin who had, he had 10 houses in the Indianapolis area. So he's running it himself basically, and maybe has a couple people working for him. But it's not that anymore.
Yeah.
It's call centers and mechanics that are all paid
Aren't
for.
there a bunch of Chinese, like you mentioned, Chinese wealthy people, but isn't like large swaths of land in the West just like open acreage bought by wealthy Chinese families?
And farmland too.
Yeah,
And
farmland.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's a ton of stuff that they're putting in, because people need to understand that, when you say CCP in China, people have this tendency, and it makes sense, that you want to put that into an American perspective, right? We categorize things by trying to put into boxes that are familiar to us, but there isn't anything like the CCP in the United States, because they say, their government stops here and their business starts there, so that's the separation. No, there is no separation. There's no real separation, and these aren't necessarily sort of like nefarious plots, right? This is just a general strategy that they're employing. They say they realize that if they own this farmland, then they can control U.S. output. They can get better consumption for Chinese goods. Obviously, their consumption of this is going to be much more than us. They know that in many cases, when they were fighting back against these tariffs that President Trump was employing when he first got in, Joe Biden, by the way, has kept a lot of these tariffs in place because they're widely popular. They're extremely popular. And they know, though, that the farmers of the U.S. are doing a lot of sales on the international market. A lot of that ends up in China. They can kind of set the prices on this, but they realize, hey, if we own the land, then we can just control the farms directly.
Do you know who the largest private farmland owners in the United States is?
This is the one where it's Bill Gates.
It's Bill Gates.
Yeah,
Bill Gates is the largest private farmland owner in the U.S.
Good for him.
Yeah.
Regarding
rolling the sleeves up, getting
I'm
out
glad
from behind
something
the
good
computer.
finally happened for that guy.
But hold on. Let me. Sorry, there's more. The Gateses aren't the only 1%ers with dirt in their portfolios. Over the last decade, farmland has taken off as an asset class. Finance speak for a type of investment that Wall Street salespeople urge wealthy people to include in their well-balanced portfolios. The basic pitch: buy land. They aren't making it anymore. So it's not just Bill Gates. I mean, there's a lot of conspiracies about why he's doing it. I think he just wants to own land. I think owning land is a really smart investment. That's what they say to people: buy land. The point is, the billionaires are buying it up. They're also buying up Bitcoin. I don't think they expect to lose money on these things. But when working class people, middle class people can't buy these things, they can buy Bitcoin. I'm not saying they should, don't get advice from me. But if they can't buy land, then what can they transfer to their kids? What will they own?
a desire for land.
This is what's scary, and sort of I want to jump back to part of the discussion on real estate, but I will say this as well. I know that earlier this year, China was buying so much. They were buying up so many of the corn futures, or so much corn futures, that they ended up pushing the market to an 8-year high. So they seem, So they seem to be very interested in this. I know also that with these massive companies purchasing real estate, part of what frightens me about that, I mentioned this earlier when I said that people who don't own property are easier to control, is that we have seen payment processors and credit card companies in the past decline service to people who they disagree with politically or who are very controversial. Who's to say that these massive companies don't get woke, take a stand, and say we're not going to rent to bigots?
Wow. It's almost like Bitcoin solves a lot of that.
Regarding the Chinese purchase of land, so if a Chinese citizen bought land, the CCP could seize that land from that Chinese person because they're a Chinese citizen. Is that right?
Not easily, right?
But they could.
They could, but more likely than not, it would be put in some kind of arbitrary. Let's say they would
If
throw
it's
in jail or something.
If it's American land, they would have to do it through the person, right? The Chinese government's not going to come to the United States
they're not gonna
government
come here.
and be like, that legal document that says that person owns it, we own it now. They're going to be like, get out of here.
But they could station Chinese troops on that piece of land. Like, okay, if a Chinese citizen buys a piece of land in the United States, does the United States still own the land? Like, how does that work? Who owns that property?
The United States still has
globally?
Sovereignty.
Yeah, I mean, like the
Sovereignty,
United
but
States
not
is
ownership.
still
That's a
collecting
sovereign
property
question.
tax from that
Right.
person.
Right.
China can't put troops there.
No.
They can't do that.
What about
So-
police?
They could put spies.
No.
What about like private
They
police?
can put spies surreptitiously, but
Surreptitious,
that's
sure, but
private
that's
security.
probably the
Yes,
long
private
short of it.
security.
They could hire and station private security in Chinese.
And those private security have to operate under U.S. laws
Yeah.
with proper U.S.
Yeah,
accreditation.
right. Until the
and things
war
like that.
breaks out.
They can do the things you would do on your property, basically.
Before the war breaks out, the U.S. military goes in and sweeps it out. Like,
Yeah, but how
they're
much
not-
land do they own? That's my concern. If they're buying up,
If war breaks out, they don't own any land. That's the best part.
But if
all of the debt that China holds in the U.S., if right now, just like, Joe Biden's sitting there and he's like falling asleep and then he farts and goes, "Oh, I declare war on China." Oh, what happened? Our debt's gone. There's no debt when you're at war. Imagine some guy being like, "You owe me $100," and then punching him in the face. You
I
don't
don't
owe
owe
them
you nothing.
You don't owe them anything anymore. You're fighting
My
now.
concern is
But
if they buy up thousands of farms and then station private security all over the place, Chinese private security, and then that's just an insurgent. It sure sounds
Well,
like an
the
insurgency.
goal is financial directly, right? And this is something where, and I've had large disagreements with people on this very question over, are we falling into, the Thucydides trap, right? Is there an impossible to get away from war with China that we are hurtling towards? Is this inevitable? Is this something that cannot be stopped? And the way I look at it is, I think something more like the Great Reset is more like what's inevitable, because China doesn't want to go to war with us. We're their biggest customer, right? They want us to be in that consumer mode. They want us to be in that constant state of, right, like you said, not owning property, not worrying about, trying to generate wealth of our own. As long as it's enough where we're purchasing their goods, we're not causing any problems, we're not getting involved too much with the real, the actual realities on the ground as the way things, are in China. Don't worry about those Uyghurs. Don't worry about those people in Hong Kong. Don't worry about the freedom fighters that are, constantly being detained throughout China. We just saw this huge protest in Nanjing University, right? Nanjing Normal University, which might seem kind of insignificant. It was a university protest, whatever. We have those in the U.S. like every 5 minutes. In China, that's a big deal. In China, that's quite a big deal. There are workers' protests in China, in the provinces, on a fairly regular basis, but they're just not heard about in U.S. media. They don't have social media access, so we don't know about it a lot. But it's a constant thing. In the mid 2000s, this was going on a lot. But for students to protest like that, I mean, and obviously we're in very close proximity to the anniversary of Tiananmen Square, and nowhere near on that scale, right? Because Tiananmen wasn't even just Beijing; it was all over the country. But to see any Chinese students at, kids in their 20s, basically standing up against the government, because essentially, I don't know if you know the story, the idea was they had been going to what were considered private universities, but the Ministry of Education had come in and said, yeah, you're not going to be private universities anymore. We're going to consolidate you down. We're going to consider these to be vocational tech schools at this point. So it's basically kind of like imagine if you had spent all the money to go to a private university, and then the government comes in and says, yeah, that's a community college now. So your degree is worth, it was worth here, and now it's worth here. And in China, that's still a huge deal. So the kids go nuts. They go absolutely nuts, and the police came in and were just completely brutal with them. But the difference is, this went super viral all across Chinese media.
What, recently?
So last week.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. They locked the city down, didn't they?
The whole city got put under lockdown. It was multiple campuses where this thing broke out. At one point, the Chinese government came out, and the CCP saying, "Oh, well, they took the dean hostage, right? And so that's why we had to go in." Right. You wonder if they were actually taking kind of like a Black Lives Matter sort of take on things. But then the kids posted pictures of the guy, and he had like a box of chicken and a soda. And he said, no, he came and sat down with us. And you could see like other kids sitting around with him. And so, I know what you're saying.
Evergreen,
it's kind of hard to tell, but it didn't look like a hostage situation.
I mean, at Evergreen College, they definitely, locked the administrators, and they're like, we didn't hold anybody hostage. Like, they weren't free to leave, though. But so in terms of, we're talking about the potential for war with China, we have the story from Yahoo. So much at stake. PM's chilling warning on conflict with China. This Prime Minister Scott Morrison will call on the world leaders to stand in unison against the growing threat of China. On Wednesday, he will deliver a major foreign policy speech ahead of a trip to the United Kingdom, where he'll be a guest at a meeting of the world economic powers, including the U.S., Germany, and France. Bro, it sounds like war with China is seriously on the horizon. It's not just this. Not just Australia being like, yo, it's happening. I mean, obviously, China came back and they're like, that's rubbish. There's no war. The U.S. just dispatched its Pacific fleet across the Pacific in anticipation of Chinese rocket attacks. Well, right, but so the U.S. has their air fleet in two different bases, one in Japan, I think in Okinawa, I could be wrong, and one in Guam. And there was concern that...
You're talking about the aircraft or the Navy?
It's the Air Force.
Oh, it's the Air Force,
yes. Yeah. So they were worried that these Chinese rockets would just wipe out these bases instantly. They'd have no time to scramble.
It wouldn't just be the bases, it'd be the entire island. I mean, I've gone through those scenarios when I was in the Navy, and I mean, it basically comes down to like, at what time would they be destroying what facility, right? Okinawa's right there. It's
So,
right there.
but so what the U.S. has done is they've dispatched the fleet around the Pacific. So now there's like some bombs here, some planes there, and they straight up said, "Oh, it's so in anticipation of war with China, we will not be vulnerable to these attacks." We're seeing that. We're also seeing the Pentagon is buying up weapons specifically for naval and Pacific warfare, as opposed to Middle Eastern warfare like drone strikes and things like that. Seems like Thucydides' trap is a given, and they recognize it. Now, maybe the economic stuff was an attempt to stop it. Maybe this like NBA stuff was like, the more business we build up, the less likely there will be a war, and war is bad. Sounds like war is going to happen.
Yeah, so I'll put it this way, that is there a near-peer competitor that would be at the most, and when I say that, I mean another state actor which would have a comparable military to the United States that the U.S. could potentially go to war with? Number one, definitely be China, 100%, right? The reason that I'm still, I'd bet against it, it's like I'd put it 60-40 right now, is because they're just making so much money off of us. Right, they're constantly making money off of us. They're making even more money now after the pandemic, which they certainly played to their own. I'm not one of those people who thinks the pandemic was, a deliberate plot or anything like that by them. But I think it's something that once it hit, they realized how to spin everything in their favor, financially speaking. They're positioning themselves to be the major beneficiaries of the Great Reset. They're still in bed with all of our elites, with all the Western elites, and by and large have been financed and built up by Western elites. And they're winning the war. So here's they're essentially winning. So why would they? Why go hot? Right? Why shoot? And the only thing that I think that could potentially lead to that is if you see the actual party from the inside be threatened. If you see Xi Jinping feel that his rule is threatened, if you see him potentially weakened and by rivals, then does he make a play for Taiwan?
Maybe there's a bunch of protests breaking out across the country, which could threaten to destabilize the social order. Is that possible?
This is why I keep an eye on it.
Yeah. Well, so you were mentioning this a moment ago in the earlier segment, but just a minute ago, that these massive protests were breaking out in all across China. I mean, is that something you think could make the Chinese Communist Party fear their control over the country?
Potentially, but that's going to lead to internal crackdowns. That wouldn't be something that would, they would want to do some kind of like, external big, like wag the dog type approach to anything. And, Xi Jinping is starting to now get credit for essentially not, I wouldn't say the return of Hong Kong, but just the control of Hong Kong, right? They view this as a huge win. And if you look at those, the 6/4 anniversary. So the anniversary of Tiananmen Square is June 4th. And if you look at those images out of Victoria Park in Hong Kong, downtown Hong Kong, this has always been the spot where since 1989, the people of Hong Kong, particularly young people, particularly students, would go out every single June 4th night and hold a candlelight vigil there in Victoria Park. And so there's these montage photos people have put up on the internet where it shows that it's this huge thing and it's every year. And it sort of became this sort of hybrid dual meaning where it's in commemoration of Tiananmen Square, but it's also that, hey, we know you don't want us doing this after 1997 and the handover, that, okay, we're part of Chinese sovereignty now under Beijing, but we are still going to do this because we are Hong Kong and we are free. Last year, it was incredibly diminished crowd. All of a sudden, you see this huge park, but it's only maybe 50% capacity. And then this last year, it's empty. It's completely empty.
You are going to see a lot of people, and I think you are, in the United States, moving from libertarian to authoritarian very, very quickly. With the Nickelodeon thing where the drag queen dancer is showing the red salute, the communist fist, and telling the kids this is a good thing, look at this, and they're flashing on the screen. And just a lot of what's happening in this country, it's hyperpolarization, right? So on my main channel,
plus anything with kids, anything involving
kids,
right. You're tripping. You are tripping those. That's a primal red line, right?
But
that's biological, spiritual, everything.
Yeah, the story of the dad and the mom in Texas fighting over custody of the kid who was the mom said it was trans, the dad said wasn't. I mean, these are serious issues. I covered vaccine segregation on my main channel today because Democrats are increasingly pushing what is called vaccine segregation. So there's going to be a grand reopening of New York City where 70% of the tickets will go to people who are vaccinated, and then 30% to people who are unvaccinated will go to special segregated areas. Madison Square Garden's doing an event where you have to be fully vaccinated. So you have to have your 2 full doses. It has to be a few weeks after or whatever. Then you can get in. Whereas red states are doing the exact opposite. So I bring this up just to tie it into what we're talking about with China and the expansion and possible war. China's extremely authoritarian. The authoritarian nature is allowing them just iron fist control of Hong Kong, right? No more protests.
Right.
The U.S. is being rocked and shattered by protest. So I think what's going to happen is you're going to see a lot of people who are just, I mean, I've already heard the conversations where they're like, well, freedom is for peacetime. You know, libertarianism, liberty is for peacetime. When you're in a time of war, that's when the rules go out the window. You've got the potential for war with China. And this is what a lot of people are saying. Because we're such a free-spirited country that allows a lot of liberty, it allows the rise of subversive groups who would weaken us at a time when we're facing potential war. China's not doing that. If China goes to war, their country's locked down and everyone falls in line. If the U.S. goes to war, it's just we're gonna depart
there's
from-
also a huge dichotomy there as well. You talk to, we talked about millennials earlier, right? I don't know how many I'd love to actually pull up the millennial home ownership numbers. Well, we all know it's terrible. We all know it's completely bottomed out. But how many millennial homeowners are flying, American flags in front of their houses, or even renters, right? And it's going to be, I don't know if there's any studies on this, but my guess is that would be quite a lot less than their parents, right? In China, it's the exact opposite. The generation that you are seeing come up now in China are 10 times more hyper nationalistic than any that has preceded them, potentially since the communist, the communist cultural revolution of the 1960s.
Was there like a noticeable change in the Chinese population after Tiananmen Square? And because maybe you can explain a little bit about how many people died.
It would be after the great the one-child policy is when you see the noticeable shift. It's like a plateau, just drops off.
Part of me would love to see a simulation of what these leftists would experience should China win the economic war and any potential hot conflict.
Can we send them there?
Yeah.
It's
Get
not
rid of
it's but they wouldn't live.
Every Bides law can just go right over.
And for those that aren't familiar, it means white left. It's their word for SJW. But no. If the U.S. loses this economic conflict, this trade war, the economic war, or even the Cold War or the hot war, whatever it becomes, they're not going to live anywhere near as good as the people of China will live. So we can say like, oh, we'll send them to China. Well, I mean, Chinese cities, they have political problems. There's authoritarianism, but the people still live in city conditions. If we go to war and we lose that war, it's like then you live at the whims of your
I see what you're saying, right?
Yeah, they're going to be living like POWs. They're going to be living.
So
horrifying.
your ability to protest, that's gone out the window, right? Your blog, your social media accounts, your Tumblrs, your whatever it is where you're going. And the reason I mentioned Tumblr is because that's it's like oversharing, right? It's overfree. It's who can say the most taboo thing, who can push the most buttons. That's gone. That's going overnight.
You're gonna start to make people support the CCP here.
I know, right?
Careful.
They're going to have these. I love it. There's this meme where these leftists are
I'll tell you what they think about Christianity next.
No,
there's this meme where the leftists, like the Bernie people, are like, we should put the 1% in gulags, make them break rocks for a few months so they know what hard work is like. It's like, bro, you guys don't do hard work at all. Like, I think if what they don't realize is that the things they're advocating for would put them in gulags breaking rocks so they can learn the value of hard work. They're not going to go to the guy who's like working at a steel mill. They're not going to go to the guy who's a construction worker. They're just going to be like, keep working, and they're going to be like, okay. They're going to go to the intelligentsia, the college academic kids, these activists, and they're going to be they're the problem. Whenever these takeovers happen, they immediately try and purge the intelligentsia who made the revolutions happen.
100%. Yeah, those people are dangerous. They're subversive.
Right.
There's a reason that we don't talk about the Mensheviks anymore.
Yeah.
Everyone knows what happens to the Mensheviks.
So, but ultimately, I bring this up because it's like if war is inevitable, our greatest weakness is our internal conflict. I mean, there are already people who have been super chatting us saying things like they think it's China's plan to promote these leftist anti-American ideas.
Well, sure.
To teach anti-American history lessons, to claim the country is awful. What happens then if there's complete demoralization? And then a Chinese boat crashes on the shores of Santa Monica and a bunch of soldiers walk out and they're like, we're here to liberate you from the oppressive, racist white people.
Paul Wolfowitz, right? We'll be greeted as liberators.
Exactly.
Well, here's the thing, though. When we sort of talked about this the other day, the people who would bow to the Chinese government aren't really the people who would have been much of a threat had they put up a fight anyway. So
And
I
there
don't-
is a gun behind every blade of
that's,
grass.
Yeah,
what's
exactly.
the name of the Chinese army?
The Red Army.
No, the official name.
What is it?
The People's Liberation
Yeah.
Army. You see, they've already thought of
Great
this.
name.
They've already thought
Yeah.
this through.
But if we get to the point where, you know, we're all racing our embassies fly the flags of Black Lives Matter, we're
Oh,
seeing
yeah.
children's show fly the red salute. The CCP members perform the red salute when they're, you know, being brought into the party or whatever.
Oh yeah.
They're going to come here and be like, no, we agree with you. We're the same. They're going to be like, they're going to have the flags with the fist on it. And then the leftists are going to be like, oh, this is a good thing. And they're going to say, we're here to liberate you from the evil white supremacists. And you're going to have a lot of people being like, awesome.
And then the Chinese Communist Party will go through
Then there'll be
every
Chinese
piece of
supremacists
social
and-
media you've
yeah.
ever posted, including all the people that they think are on their side. Look at all their. If there's one thing that got said out of,
Well,
they'll be
it's
in a
not even
gulag.
that. It's not even that. They'd look at it and say who's useful and who's not.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. If you're of no use to us, if you can't be put to work, if you're not in STEM fields or producing something of value, if you're not an actual worker, then you're just get out of here. You're done. Go sit and be, assume your consumption bubble, sit in your pod, eat your bugs, right? That's you. That's your job.
Well, so this goes back to the conversation we were talking about before. Let me pull up this story I find very, very strange. And it's about the pods, basically. From Business Insider, most millennial homeowners regret buying their home, survey finds. That just reeks of me of propaganda.
Yeah, I wanna see how
Millennials,
those numbers
you
break
don't
down.
want to own your own home.
That's right.
Where you're paying less than you would for a rent and you're keeping all the equity except for the interest. No, you don't want to do that. It's a terrible thing.
Does it say why? Does it say like millennials
Well-
want to move around more, or does it even give any?
They say
reason?
20% said expensive maintenance costs and 13% said it was because they overpaid. And I look at that and I'm like, this article to me reeks of live in the pod. We've already got all the eat the bugs articles, the cicadas. By the way, the cicadas are getting smaller. So I went outside today and
That's
there's
because the big ones are getting eaten.
well, no. I think it's because the big ones, the strong ones came out earlier and then died. And what's happening now is the weaker ones have been slow to emerge and they're much smaller.
Yeah.
So we're close to the end of the cicada swarm. But the media's been saying, eat the bugs like crazy. Even Tucker Carlson is like, I'm
I
going to eat a
saw
bug
that.
live on TV. It's delicious.
Tucker ate a bug on
Tucker
TV.
The
ate a
elite want you to
cicada
think.
pastry on TV.
The elite want you to
pastry.
think you shouldn't eat bugs. Of course you can.
Of course you can.
Of course you can eat bugs.
Of course you can.
Of course, it's
actually.
the right of every
Actually.
American. Yeah, exactly.
You have to- no,
Actually.
the best Tucker is using actually at the end of a sentence. So,
Yeah.
That is very
And then
true.
when
Yeah.
he has a guest on,
yeah, I've always noticed.
He
that
just
with
goes,
Tucker.
Seamus is
the
making
elite
the
wants you to
face.
think that you're not supposed to eat bugs.
Actually.
You are. Actually.
But actually, people around the world eat bugs and they
True.
enjoy it. So
What
anyway,
about lobster?
we-
Lobster's
we're-
a bug. People eat that.
Yeah, lobster is a bug though.
Yeah.
You know who
lobster,
doesn't eat bugs?
Lobster, crab,
Antifa.
any of that.
That's right.
Antifa doesn't eat
Antifa.
bugs.
so
Maybe
okay,
we should make
Tucker
Read
ate
about Antifa's diet in my new book at antifabook.com.
There you go. Oh,
So
Did you like study them like animals?
Yes, I did. As a
This
matter
is
of
what
fact,
they
yeah, I did.
consume. These are the.
You should.
No,
you-
they did in Chaz. They had a whole like co-op with food and everything. So
Bugs?
yeah,
They're mating
no
patterns.
bugs.
No
So
bugs.
it's
No
true.
cicadas.
No,
Antifa doesn't eat
Antifa
bugs.
doesn't eat
There were
bugs.
no
Yeah,
Confirmed.
there were no bugs in Chaz.
You should
Yeah,
do
I
a
don't remember
video
seeing any
spoof.
bugs.
You should do a video spoof with shots of Antifa and do like the Earth style documentary.
Right.
The young Antifa
That's exactly what I was thinking,
approaches
yeah.
the female and performs his dance, a mating ritual.
It doesn't work.
Anyway, we're talking about eating the bugs and
And
living
then
in the
we'll
pot.
have the Snoop Dogg version on top of that.
Yeah.
I got some questions about this article.
Well, so it's an article. It's not the only one, right? There's also this other story from Reuters that says U.S. consumers sour on housing market's buying conditions. I mean, I guess that's true because the ultra wealthy are buying up these houses. But bro, they're saying live in the pod and eat the bugs. The people who don't buy houses, have you seen apartments in New York? They are pods. Dude, I remember watching these stories on like the news where they're like, this apartment goes for $3,000. It's a closet.
Yeah.
It's literally a closet, and they're like, it's a bed in it. I mean, Hong Kong is basically like that. You know, they got these really tiny, cramped apartments. Now, there's like a subreddit dedicated for these really awful tiny apartments where it's like a bed next to a toilet in a closet.
Well, there's even worse if you look at some of the illegal housing structure they have set up in Hong Kong and Beijing, where it'll be these sort of like large, kind of like the room we're in right now, but inside the room they'll have essentially what looks like steel rack bunk beds. And then you can rent one of the bunks, and you might be in a room with like 80 other dudes. And, you know, here's a family that's got like 2 bunks, right? But it's like 5 people. and that's it. And you go to work and you come back to your bunk, and I'm like, the pod would be like a step up from some of this stuff.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Well, that's where we're going. So I think it's time for people
And
to
we'll
get away
love
from
it.
cities.
That's right.
You will
You
love
will
it.
be
You
happy.
will own nothing and you'll be happy. They make that video, but you know what? They're not wrong. They're not wrong. People can look. This is what I was saying this earlier today. If you were born in the 1400s, are you going to complain about not having a smartphone? You wouldn't know what a smartphone is. Are you
Right.
guys complaining about not being able to teleport right now?
No.
Yes.
Well,
Yeah,
I
all the
am.
time.
Sometimes.
Yeah.
Like,
Every
why can't I
jacket.
You have
teleport?
any idea how long it takes me to drive here? Yeah.
That's also because
Teleport
teleporting
right
just
now.
kills you and recreates you in another place.
Oh,
so I'm
good.
not
That's
about
true.
that. That's where
So
I
is
stand
it? So
on
is it really? Is it
teleportation
really
question.
you? That's
Yeah,
the question. Is it
yeah.
really you?
Yeah.
That comes
Well,
back.
so look, right now there's a bunch of technology that'll exist in 100 years we don't know about,
Right.
and we don't have access to it. I mean, we're relatively happy.
That's what it is.
So this is what they're exploiting. They're exploiting that if the serfs have access to knowledge, then they will become unhappy with their circumstances. So they want us to be ignorant. The people who are following the mainstream media, not watching shows like this, not getting a critical thought process through, they're just going to, Brian Stelter said it, so it must be true. I'm happy. They're going to get their home taken away from some ridiculous. They're going to say, oh no, because of COVID, we've got to take your house now. And they're going to go, well, if it saves one life, that'll be it. And then people who aren't in those states, in red states, this is what's crazy. The red states are going the other direction. DeSantis, Abbott, no vaccine passports. New York, California, Illinois, Washington, yes. So what happens? New York says if you want to go to these businesses, you need a vaccine, the Excelsior Pass, they call it. So what happens if you're visiting from Texas, just a tourist, you want to go visit? Sorry, you can't come in.
We don't like your kind around here.
Yeah. So people won't go. What'll happen is people who live in New York who don't want to live under a vaccine passport in a pod or eating bugs will move to Texas.
Yep.
Texas will then become ideologically homogenous among people who like freedom, don't want to live in pods or eat bugs.
Ooh, I don't know about that, man. Because
Well-
I think a lot of people will leave these blue states for a red state, but still vote for all the horrible things that destroyed their state in the first place. They'll go like, oh, I really don't like all of these things the government's forcing me to do, so I'm going to move somewhere where I'm more free. But then they're just going to vote for all the same stupid stuff that destroyed their place.
I don't think so, because
initially.
the reason I disagree with that is the people in blue states who are for vaccine passports are happy with them and demanding them. There are these TikTok videos where the girl's like, I can't believe our governor just banned vaccine passports. Like, how dumb. They don't want to live there. They want to leave. And people in New York are like, why don't we have more? What did Vice.com write? They wrote this article the other day. Why aren't we mandating vaccine passports? These people are going to jump and cheer to be in New York getting locked down under these things. And people who don't like that will leave not wanting to live that way. And then you will have an actual physical divide between states and ideology. And then it's like the politicians from Washington and the politicians from, Utah or whatever, or whoever else passed a ban on vaccine passports, they are going to be like totally different countries. No shared culture, completely at odds. And then what happens? What happens when New York says, you get Cuomo being like, we have to have vaccine passports because of the potential for a fifth wave. And then he says, we're going to have to lock down the borders like we did last time and do checks for people who are vaccinated. When the pandemic first started, they had cops at the roads into and out of Manhattan.
That's already started to an extent with this, and I think they keep changing the name of the Indian variant or the Nepalese variant. But there's already people saying that we're not sure if the current vaccines that have been rolled out will be effective against the new variant, which is always sort of like one of the corollaries with the vaccine, right? That, hey, this may not affect new variants. Well, it looks like the thing that's actually spreading across India and is now potentially continuing may not be affected by the current. We don't know if they're effective yet.
So what happens then if you live in Texas or Florida or North Carolina is an East Coast state? It voted for Trump and they have a substantially lower ratio of vaccinations. What happens if you live there and you try to go to New York? They're not going to let you in. They're literally going to bar you and be like, if you're not vaccinated, you can't come.
Oh no.
Then you'll have, you say, oh no, for sure.
I'm kidding because New York is
no,
red.
but the seriousness of it is the hard divide.
This is a very
between-
different issue
sure.
than just like, you see it with gun owners right now. So they have like the drive-through laws that if I am a gun owner, but I'm driving through a state like New Jersey or I'm driving through New York, well, as long as I'm not stopping and, spending a substantial amount of time in that state, then I can still have my guns in the car. I'm just driving through, right? This isn't my final destination. As long as you're following, they have to be broken apart and ammo has to be separate, et cetera, et cetera. But you can physically have them. This is different because I will not go to that state, number one, or I do not want people from that state coming here, number two, and that's only going to lead. I mean, sports teams. But what happens with sports teams then? Do they still play? Right? Are we gonna? Is that going to be allowed? Et cetera.
What happens when a Texas-based sports team, I'm sure, which has many conservatives playing on the team, you just don't hear their politics, and they're like, I talked to my doctor, vaccine's not right for me, I don't feel like doing it. Then they're like, well, if you want to go play at the World Series or whatever against the Yankees in New York, you have to, otherwise you can't go in. And they'll be like, nah. This is a hard divide. So a lot of people talked about.
It's the Olympics right now, by the way, is facing all this. That's why. We were supposed to be like gearing up for, we had the 2020 Olympics postponed to 2021. Summer started, where's the Olympics? Like, where's the gear up towards it? And in Tokyo, they're freaking out. One IOC guy just committed suicide, just threw himself in front of a subway.
It's horrible.
Because the sheer amount of pressure that's on them because of all this and all these athletes. And, you look at some of these sports, by the way, where, like, a lot of them they live off of the Olympics, right? You can't the whole sport collapses without that. That Olympics is held every 4 years, and so you realize that all of these questions are having very real consequences right now in real time. And are we going to get to a situation where I think you think of like the late night comedy. Oh, those people in Texas, they won't come up to imagine how insufferable Jimmy Kimmel is going to be, right, once that starts. But imagine then how radical. So if Jimmy Kimmel is the leading edge of it, right, then how radical will even the more radical people become towards people from, somebody walking down the street with a cowboy hat on? Do you become a target now?
Yeah. So Bill Maher said a while ago, we're going to tone down the attacks against Trump and his supporters because it could very well lead to a civil war. Bill Maher actually said that on the show.
I didn't realize that. That's great.
Yes.
That's great.
Good for him.
Later on,
that's huge.
He said there can't be a civil war because the Mason-Dixon line would go through Nana's kitchen or something like that, which is like a really dumb statement. It's like he thinks time stopped the moment he said those words. Bro, the future is a thing. And things can change. Does he think that like in 1861 they're like there can't possibly be a civil war? Yeah, a lot of people thought that exactly. So it's like who do you think you are? You have no idea what could happen. We got all these counties in Oregon just voted to secede from the state and join Idaho. They literally voted to do that. Now whether or not it'll happen, probably not, but the sentiment is there. Now you have obviously there's cultural issues, but ultimately it comes down to tribal issues. For tribal reasons, people are choosing to do things. Like David Hogg, I'm going to wear a mask so that no one thinks I'm a conservative.
I'm a Republican. It's insane.
Yeah, it's nothing to do with the CDC guidelines. There was we had Elijah Schaffer on the show the other day, and now he's flying back out. And he has this tweet. It's fantastic. He said they made an announcement over the intercom on the plane that even though the CDC changed the guidelines on masks, the federal government is still requiring everybody abide by this, which leaves all of these people on the plane confused because they were supposed to do what the CDC said. Now they're being told they can't. So anyway, I digress on that point.
Dude,
it was never about listening to the science.
Right. So I bring that up because it is totally tribal. And now we are getting the physical dividing line between the tribes.
Well, have you heard the
real quick,
idea of like when your tribe expands and contracts?
Well, just one more point. There's a story from NPR that shows if you look at all of the states on a scale of the highest per capita vaccinations to the lowest, there's a line right through the middle. And there's like a weird gap. All of the states that are higher in per capita vaccinations, who did they vote for in 2020?
I have no idea.
Joe Biden.
I was
And
lying.
on the other side, they're all red except for the 4 states that were contested by Trump and his team, and I think Missouri. I'm not sure Missouri was contested, but that makes sense.
It's
all
kind of a a swing state.
All the Trump all the Trump supporting states are lower on the vaccination per capita, and the states that were like really close and were being contested are also slightly lower, and then all the hard blue pro Biden states totally like high 70%, 75% vaccinations. So Washington, they're now rolling out vaccine passports. New York, we're going to see it everywhere. But what's happening is it's not a hardcore thing where they're like, California isn't coming out and saying you must have a vaccine passport or else. They're saying, yes, come in. And if you're not vaccinated, you can go into the bathroom and sit down and have your beer, but you can't be near other people. They're making people not participate socially, which creates not a mandate, but a social pressure toward these things, which means, like I mentioned, people who live in New York who won't live that way will go to Florida or Texas. I know, how many people do you guys know moved to Texas recently?
Oh, it's great.
Yeah,
Texas and
wow.
Florida.
A bunch.
Too. Texas and Florida.
We had some
Everywhere.
guests here, and I'm not going to say who they are because I don't know if they've announced they're moving to Texas, but they're like, yeah, I'm moving to Texas. And I'm like,
Multiple people, yeah.
several people. And Florida, Luke, who was on this show for 2 months, Luke Gurkowski, we are changed. Luke, what are you doing, you traitor? He went to Florida.
Yeah, I moved to the South about 6 years ago. So
Oh, how was it?
went down there for school and never left. So I don't know anyone who's moving to Texas because I'm already in the South. There's nowhere to go. We're not-
DeSantis is doing a pretty good job. Not perfect, but nobody is, and he's doing probably one of the best jobs in the country as a governor, in my opinion. And so people want to be there. But
Yeah.
I don't like living in, like, people need to understand the humidity in
yeah.
Florida is so intense. You're swimming. You're like, you basically just
so
underwater.
weird.
Trump left. He
Oh,
said.
he
He
did?
said. He told.
Can't
He's like.
take it.
He's like. I'm not doing this. He's like,
The
we're going back to
draft
New York.
He's what? He's going back to New York?
He went back to New York for the summer. He said, I'm not even going to be here.
It's
So
hor-
he's a
yeah.
Florida resident
It is
now, but he's
tough.
up in.
Yep.
well,
Did he
he's
get
staying in
vaccinated?
Bedminster.
He did.
He did. They said he
Yep.
did. But he
And
didn't.
I think Ivanka did it publicly. She took a picture.
She did it publicly, but then Trump, they said he was vaccinated and Melania before they left the White House, but they never really made a big public thing out of it.
What about
the way
Barron?
A lot of people do. I don't know.
Yeah. No idea.
He's not in the at-risk category. I wonder if Trump would do that.
I just think, when New York, they've announced this massive, I think it's like a $17 million expansion. They're funding the Excelsior system. It's more than just vaccines. The Excelsior system is going to track your medical history, period, and your age and a bunch of other things, which means they could actually say, like, you can't be over 55 to come in here, scan your Excelsior pass. They're really getting into this
Well,
stuff.
so let me go back to what I was going to say earlier is that, people are generally tribal, right? That's how humanity developed, were these bands of tribes. And then as cities and then city-states started to become more developed, your tribe expanded, right? And so if you look into, I think we're all generally millennials/elder millennials.
No,
here.
he's a Gen Xer.
I'm
called
right
me
on the
out.
bridge of millennial and Gen Z.
Okay.
What year were you born?
95.
Oh, wow. I think you
he's
were
young.
Gen Z.
Wow.
I might be. I don't know. I've heard different definitions though.
You're
for some people that's
kind
right
of on
at
the
the cutoff.
bridge.
Yeah,
You're kind of on the
exactly.
bridge of Gen Z. But anyway, put it this way. So if you look at like 80s, 90s,
You're a millennial.
right?
Okay.
Your
Sorry.
your
Yeah, I know, it's
tribe
rough.
was generally pretty much the United States of America, right? I'm an American first, and then you're everything else, right? Then you have your religion, and then your state, and then what sports team you like, et cetera, and then the enemy is the Soviets, or then eventually it became the terrorists. You have to say it like that, the terrorists.
Terrorists.
For a
Terrorist
while, but then.
renegades.
Really starting past 2008, and I don't want to make this an Obama thing, but like I think it's more financial as well. That with that financial instability, that you saw a breakup of that idea, and so because in times of scarcity, right, the tribes get smaller, and because we're looking now, we're thinking instead of these abundant. This idea that the future is always going to be great. We're looking to the next frontier. We're sending space shuttles up all the time, right? That's my childhood. Now I take my kids to Cape Canaveral. The space shuttles are in museums, and Elon Musk and Bezos are like doing something, but we're not really sure if it's real or not.
Yeah.
It doesn't feel the same, right? It doesn't have that same sort of national ethos behind it, the same way that the space shuttle program did, and there's this question of like, what team am I on? Or some people question, are you the left or the right? I don't even remember anyone talking like that when I was younger. It's like, yeah, I voted for the Democrat, I voted for the Republican this time because I like this team better, or I like this political form better. But there wasn't this idea that you had to be on one side all the time, 24/7. And so the question, really psychologically speaking, is that something that's downstream of economics? The same way that we say politics is downstream from culture, but is culture downstream from economics?
Yeah, I mean, it's obviously all really intermingled, but there's something interesting there about resources contracting and then people really wanting to almost oust people from their side. It's almost like this biological response. There's less for
Right.
all of us, so we need to find a reason to expel people so that there's more for me. It is fascinating.
Yeah, it's in-group, out-group.
And I think, ironically enough, that actually exacerbates the problem, too, because the less people are working together, the less able they are to build up the economic resources that would allow for them to not have to oust people.
Historically, part of what would get people ousted too was getting sick, illness, communicable diseases.
Interesting.
You throw them out of the castle. 5-year-old has symptoms, throw them out.
Yeah.
Even if it's your sister's son or whatever.
We need only look at chicken society and to learn our important lesson. When a chicken gets sick or is hobbled or weak, they go nuts. They attack it. They'll kill it.
Now, it's really interesting, though, because something I just said a moment ago, I want to walk back a little bit, or at least expand upon, because I mentioned that when you start ousting people or purging them from your group, people aren't working together, so you're less likely to develop the economic prosperity that would be necessary for people to live in harmony. But I wonder if that's a correction mechanism, because it's very much possible, and I would say probably a concrete fact, that once people are really economically prosperous, they become much less selective about the kind of behavior that they're willing to tolerate. We see this in very developed countries. The moral fabric tends to begin to dissipate. And so maybe hard economic times are a correction mechanism for that, and people sort of returning to a structure where they are more selective about the kind of behavior they'll tolerate, because it can't continue forever with anyone doing whatever they want, or else the entire system gets destroyed.
Fourth turning.
It was bad morals that got us into this economic place, it seems like.
Something really weird happened in the past 5 years with a dramatic cultural shift. And it's funny, we bring it up from time to time, but left and right are meaningless at this point. You know,
sort of.
I mean, sure, we use them as tribal signifiers for the most part.
They're relative.
I think I've said this before. I do think that the left, in many ways, are descendants of the initial left. When I just look at this main common thread from the left at the time of the French Revolution, when the term was first coined, has always existed to oppose the Catholic Church and its values and battle against tradition. And that's still true today of the left.
But there's this really strange shift that happened. So just before the show, I played the song "Hit That" by The Offspring, and I'm like, if you listen to those lyrics, it sounds like a very conservative song. It's talking about the consequences of hookup culture, and I'm like, if you wrote an article right now, no joke, take The Offspring, punk band, pop punk, mainstream, whatever, but this is 2003. Take that song, take the lyrics, and turn it into an article. So when they say, like, you know, the consequences are a life away, you can say, like, your work.
Imagine putting it into like a relationship article.
Yeah, well, you'd be called far right.
Yeah,
you'd be called far right.
Yeah.
Criticizing Tinder and hookup culture and
misogynistic.
Yep.
You know, backward, toxic, clearly, you know, anti-female, self-hatred. If it was written by a female, you know, author.
She's internalized patriarchy, pure toxic purity culture.
Yes.
One of my favorite punk rock songs is "Why Don't You Get a Job." I know, it's pop punk. It's not like. Yeah, so, you know, I thought about this before. I tweeted about it several months ago, but I was thinking about it again about how do we get to what happened? You know, what happened? Did Trump like take a sledgehammer to the system? Did the multiverse shatter and different realities merged and just like nothing makes sense anymore?
Technological. I'm racking my brain for what changed technologically 6-7 years ago. It's the streaming capability. That's something. What were you going to say?
Well, so no. So you know that whole bit of sort of you know, everybody under 40 knows that this all started with Harambe, but we're not sure why. Right.
True.
You know, but I was talking to a friend of mine recently, who shall remain nameless. But he actually had a good answer for why we all sort of agree that it's Harambe, and what, you know, he looked at Harambe as a symbol of society is just subtly out to get you, and they will just kill you for no reason. That even though not to get into whether or not Harambe should have been killed, but you know, because the kid's in there and all, but that just sort of the larger meta narrative that's going on there, that you could be hanging out one day and that society will just come and boom, like a meat cleaver.
I hear the theory, I respect it, but I think the more obvious theory is just that Harambe was an interdimensional time lord who was holding together the
No, this is for the members thing. You're gonna get us banned again.
What are you doing? You're gonna shut down completely over here.
The guy who killed Harambe was like a secret agent sent from like another dimension, and like, you know, he walks in, he's like a Terminator, takes his glasses off.
The kid that Harambe was trying to protect.
Yeah.
He's like a future leader.
I don't know if Harambe was trying to protect the kid.
I'm actually, so I've seen a really good one, a really good meme of this recently. Quick child, you need to understand, Dr. Fauci is improving experiments with the Wuhan Institute of, you've got to warn.
That's right. He's out.
That's hilarious.
Which brings us to our next story, actually. Thank you, Harambe, for the segue. House Republicans demand answers about why Facebook censored lab leak theories after it emerged that Mark Zuckerberg was emailing Dr. Anthony Fauci. Look, man. Do we have a conspiracy fact at some point? I saw a really funny meme from somebody where it was like 2018, and it was like conspiracy theorists, and it's a picture of the guy like all crazy, and then the next picture says 2021 conspiracy analyst. And he's wearing a suit and glasses, and he's all like respectable looking. Because so now what do we have? Behind the scenes, Fauci and big tech and these labs were all saying things they were saying the opposite of publicly. Like, at a certain point, is there at least, can we call it on a scale of 1 to 10, with 1 being like the least and 10 being the worst? It's a level 1 conspiracy. Like, not a whole lot going on. I'm not going to pretend it's the apocalypse, but certainly Mark Zuckerberg was colluding with Dr. Fauci to censor factual information, right? That's surreptitious. That's unethical. That's amoral. Happening behind the scenes between powerful interests to suppress the public from communicating.
Tim, that's been debunked.
It's been rebunked.
It's been debunked.
No, it's been rebunked.
Dude,
Rebunked.
well, here's
I love
the thing.
this.
If there was one thing I learned over the past 5 or so years, it's that something can very quickly go from conspiracy theory to fact. I mean, if you asked me at the beginning of Trump's administration if the deep state would attempt to unseat a democratically elected leader, I'd be like, come on, that's crazy talk. And then if you asked me if there was an international global pedophile who had ties to virtually every politician in the country, or a large number of them, I'd be like, that seems a little bit out there.
And then if you told me the guards would fabricate, records and fall asleep or whatever, and then he would die in his jail cell, I'd be like, get out of here, dude.
Like,
we
this is
do
too
not
over
live
the
in a
top.
movie.
You want to know what's really funny?
See, that one, I'm like, have you ever been around the federal government before?
I do want to say one point. Just don't forget what you're going to say. We shouldn't. We got to call it when you put out the theory, you're bunking, and then the journalists will try to debunk, and then after they're proven wrong, it's rebunking. But
Rebunking?
continue. Yeah, rebunking.
But no, that on top of everything that's just going on with these leaks from
Tim,
Dr.
that's absolutely
Fauci.
rebunculous.
And all of the information about the pandemic we were told was just conspiracy theory, much of which turned out to be true. It just seems to me that the difference between a conspiracy theory and a fact is like 3 months to a year.
Conspiracy analyst.
Yeah.
What is
Exactly.
a conspiracy?
And I'm not big into conspiracy theory by any means. They're
right,
really, but it's just disturbing to see so many things that I would have shrugged off years ago as insane nonsense being proven totally correct.
Well, so a lot of this, I think comes down for a lot of people. It's pattern recognition, right? So I remember those initial task force meetings that Fauci was airing, and sometimes Pence would be leading it, sometimes Trump would be there, and it would would get into a huge combativeness with the media, and they would be asking him all sorts of off-the-wall questions, et cetera, et cetera. But I actually would pay attention to Fauci and Birx, who is like totally gone now, when they were talking about this. Why is it that COVID-19 spread so quickly? And you remember, we were always told it's the spike proteins and the ACE2 receptors, and it's the ability of the spike proteins to affect these ACE2 receptors in human lungs, and they fit so perfectly, and that's why it's able to spread so well in humans, right? That was
you get the
idea.
droplets on you, and that's it.
Droplets.
I was trying to do that without saying the word droplet. So that's you're hearing this all the time, and I said, oh, that's interesting, and that's very good. I'm going to write that down, right? And then when the Wuhan lab started coming up, and we started looking into this, they took down their database very quickly, but we were able to find archived copies of this. Now, and some of it I'm reading it in Mandarin, some of it we're able to translate. But when you're looking at some of the actual tests and research that was done and has been published in the literature, you say, well, okay, what is gain of function research? What the heck is that? A year ago, I couldn't have told you what that meant, right? Maybe even 2 years ago. And you say, well, they modified mice to give them this ACE2 receptor in their lungs, and then they were using gain of function research to essentially speed up the development of these coronaviruses that they had collected from this abandoned mine or cave system in Kunming area that had spike proteins, so that they would have spike proteins. And I had said, wasn't that the same thing that the guy was talking about before with the two? And right, this is me, just complete layman here, but these are the same two terms that I just heard from the task force meeting. So what's going on with that?
That was the Wuhan lab doing that.
Right.
Okay, so now let's debunk something of our own here.
Uh-oh.
Well, actually, look, credit goes to Daily Mail. No bats or pangolins were sold at Wuhan wet markets immediately before COVID-19 pandemic started, Oxford study says. Research looked at 50,000 animals traded in Wuhan from 2017 to November 2019. Scientists found no evidence of bats or pangolins kept in the markets in the city. But they say other animals traded could have easily spread COVID-19. Okay, well, then the wet market bat thing, debunked, right?
Oh, yeah.
Well, according to them, yeah.
There you go.
Well, so I read that article. I shared it today. I shared the study. But as a guy who had spent a couple of years living in China, I'm familiar with the wet markets. It always seemed completely insane to me that people would eat food that came out of these things.
Bro, have you seen gutter oil?
Gutter oil?
Yes.
I heard about this.
It's
What is
where
gutter
they
oil?
harvest used oil from sewer lines, filter out the garbage, and then boil it and use it for cooking.
Where do they do this?
In China.
I've probably had it. There are times
it's street food. They use it for
yeah.
street
There are
food.
times where I'm eating street food where they're like, hey, this is I know you're gonna lie when I ask you what kind of meat this is, so just don't even say anything. It's probably rat. I don't know. But that's what people say. Like, oh, so you ever had dog, man? You ever had dog? I'm like, not knowingly, not deliberately,
Not intentionally.
Not intentionally. Certainly not intentionally. I remember there was one place in Shanghai. And a couple of the guys I was over with, when I started out doing a study abroad there, and then I ended up staying. But there were a couple guys who went in to say like, "Hey, yeah, I had dog, right?" And it's like, "How was it?" He said, "It's kind of stringy. I don't know."
Yeah.
But anyway, going back, how could you know for the past 3 years exactly which animals were in this wet market and which ones were not? Right? How can you really tell that there were no bats or no pangolins at all in this market? That just, to me, that sounds like a bridge too far, and I know that it certainly kind of fits in with what everyone's been saying, and I think there's actually a lot better evidence to talk about. For me, the one I can't get past in terms of lab leak theory is how do you get a disease outbreak that's directly related to bats, or at least bats with one what do they call it, transmission vector animal in the middle, without it affecting any local populations that live in close proximity to any of these things? You're talking about the middle of a downtown urban center. And I've read some of the, like the Nature Journal articles talking about this, and they say, well, Wuhan's in a broad region. Like, what do you mean it's a broad region, right? Every region is broad if your aperture is wide enough. It doesn't make any sense. No, this is a huge urban industrialized area. Like, show me the town where this broke out that's near the bat caves, that has the animals, right? The zoonotic response. Like, that's what I'm waiting for, I'm looking at.
Let's talk about a crazy... I hate the word conspiracy theory because what I'm going to describe right now is not a conspiracy in any sense of the imagination.
What is it?
Just that it's obvious that there is a surface news world and a like a governmental news world, meaning there's top secret, confidential, secret information we don't have access to. So when
currently,
I mean, it comes out eventually, or we hope it does.
Yeah.
But right now, in the U.S. government and the Chinese government, they are dealing with a level of information that we can't see. So we're on the surface. There, I'm willing to bet that there's some like NSA guy sitting in his room right now watching the show because he loves it, and like him and his buddies are just like drinking and laughing, being like, "They're so wrong about all of this. China's on the moon, and we've got underwater bases." And I'm not saying it's actually that crazy.
Having been in that world, I hate to say that, but like I'm not allowed to confirm directly, blah blah blah. But it's not that far removed from reality.
I'm just saying,
it's pretty close. It's pretty close.
So when we're like, oh man, the Air Force moving these planes, there's somebody who's like, oh well, actually we're doing this. We're not going to publicly say what we're doing with our Air Force.
That's what confused me about how they told us that all the Air Force is now spread out around the Pacific and that we're diverting weaponry from the Middle East to China. Like, why would we be told that? Why would the world now be told all that information?
Well,
Seems
because
intentional.
well, for a variety of reasons. Number one though is show of force.
Yeah,
right?
it's like bravado.
So you can't hide a B-52 bomber, right? You can't hide an aircraft carrier. So that what you're talking about, that's a survivability operation. So you're separating your force. And you can even see this on a smaller scale, where like when the Syria strikes were going on, and then the U.S. kind of telegraphed that, hey, we're probably going to strike there. You would see the Syrian Air Force would they'd all take off because they didn't know which base was going to get hit, but they knew it was going to be one of them. So part of it, it's sending a message, it's posturing. A lot of this stuff gets done on a very regular basis. It goes back to even the Clinton administration, when China threatened Taiwan during some of their first presidential elections, or some of the more contentious presidential elections. You would see this, but it doesn't necessarily mean that it's leading towards some kinetic action.
Jack, you know things.
I do.
You have been chosen.
Are rods
Unfortunately.
from God real?
Well, define. I mean, which kind?
Do we have satellites loaded with tungsten rods to drop
the
on?
tungsten rods.
Yeah, they call them rods from God.
Yeah, though that one. No, because I've heard that also used with the like different types of like directed energy.
It was in G.I. Joe, the second one, where Cobra Commander takes control of the satellite,
Of course it's true.
and then it drops a tungsten rod, which then slams into the earth and blows up London.
We have some cool satellite stuff. Not that I've never seen anything like that, but we have some pretty cool satellite stuff.
I'm waiting for that Starlink. So I looked into it. We're actually supposed to any minute.
Yeah, because this would be an area where
Yeah.
Starlink
we would
is supposed to
publicize
serve
it every
right?
day too. That'd be awesome.
Would
Can
you have him on? Would you have
someone
Elon
call
on?
Elon and be like, get these guys Starlink? Because I paid for
Probably.
it. We're on the waiting list. So
So how does it work? Yeah, so people know what it is, right?
yeah, it's high speed, low latency. What is that? Gigabit internet from
Right.
satellite.
Right. From
And they
satellite.
send you a box. You just open the satellite thing, plug it in, and you put it by the window. I guess I don't know.
So
And
what's
then
so
boom.
it's the idea of satellite TV, right? But with your internet connection.
Yeah, so the thing about standard internet, we have a satellite internet backup system.
Mm-hmm.
For some reason, didn't work the past few days, but it's like 5 megabits up. So
Okay.
it's really difficult to actually do a broadcast. But it works. It'll be grainy, low res. With Starlink, it would be broadcast quality for like pennies on the dollar. This is what makes Elon's Starlink so competitive. We're on the waiting list, so that from like right now until the end of the year, at any moment, the box could arrive. I don't know if there's somebody, can we call somebody and be like, hey, just like, look, we're on the list.
Invite Elon on the show. Tell him,
come
hey,
on,
you
dude.
can manipulate whatever crypto you want to.
Just
while
let
you're
us know which
on,
one to
and,
buy, and
give you 5 minutes, and I don't know if you smoke in here or not, like
No.
like the Rogan.
family friendly.
Family friendly. Oh, sorry,
Dude,
Elon.
of course we'd love to have Elon on,
Yeah.
but like I'll settle for getting a Starlink so we never lose internet again, so we can do the show.
That'd be cool if we did our first Starlink show with Elon.
Oh, it'd be so fun.
Yeah, that'd be rad.
That's what you got to do.
So it's apparently sold out now.
Really?
Yeah, so in this area, because like we're kind of in the middle of nowhere. It's like an hour and a half from DC, so it's
Yeah.
like when you look on the map, it's just like you can't really tell because DC's massive and we're just like a tiny little blip away. But mountains, trees, it's like basically West Virginia. Just a bunch of, Trump supporting, right-wing nut jobs who live out here for the most part.
Gun tote. Well, did you see that tweet from what was it, Virginia Heffernan from the LA Times earlier today talking about the gun ownership for the 50-mile radius?
No.
So
what
she
is
was saying I guess she was like buying a house or just looking at this issue, but she was talking about, she's totally ridiculous. She's the one who had the Trump supporting neighbor who was shoveling her lawn, and she was like, or shoveling her driveway, and like, I don't know if I should thank him or what should I say to
Did
this.
he really shovel my driveway? Is the snow actually gone?
Did
was
he
a Trump supporter.
shovel it out of hate? I mean, it was white snow, so perhaps he's
gosh.
building some sort of
Snowball.
So no, she had a tweet up today where she was saying in real estate listings they should. This is the LA Times columnist. She's worked at Wired. That they should include how many people own guns around you for a 50-mile radius, and then. Correct me if I'm getting any of this wrong, and then include a list of all the mass shootings that have taken place in conjunction. Now, obviously, having a list of all the gunners is completely illegal, but also like
There are websites you can look at for criminal reports.
well,
in
no,
a particular area as well.
that's what I was saying. I just quote tweeted and I was like, yeah, who wants to tell her? Because
Yeah.
I'm willing to bet that in some of the lowest crime radiuses of the United States, there's a ton of law-abiding gun owners.
Yes.
Right? We know
Depends on the
this.
crime, right? So out here, there's a whole lot of drugs.
Sure. Okay.
But
That's
it's
right.
like
But
people
we were talking
strung
about
out.
this.
I'm guessing, I might be reading between the lines. I'm pretty sure she means violent crime.
Right. She actually says gun violence.
Okay, she says gun violence in there. Yeah.
Yeah, actually, I'm pretty sure it's a lot safer out here. I'd be more worried about Chicago.
Yeah.
Lots of gun
Or-
laws and
Yeah.
lots of people shooting each other.
Let's see a
like
list
West
of-
Virginia's constitutional carry, and people like I hear gunshots all the time. The other day.
Yeah, Baltimore's not that far away though.
Well, so this is something I explained a while ago. It's when I live in New York and I hear gunshots, that freaks me out.
Right.
Because you're not supposed to. Also, it's a really dense urban area. Like, what are they shooting?
Right.
Out here, it's like I wake up and there's gun. I wake up and I'm kind of worried when there aren't gunshots. I'm like, the neighbor's not out. Something wrong?
Yeah,
Like,
neighbors are just, I'm
worried about the neighbors, man,
Practice, or yeah.
yeah. One time, I think one of the neighbors came out with his kids because it was just like sounded like it sounded full auto, but it was just like 4 people just shooting all at the same time.
Well, there's
should be illegal.
There's places in West Virginia where you can do that. Some of the training I did when I was still in the intelligence community, we did out in a spot in West Virginia where they were able to get licenses and permits to shoot. I mean, we shot some pretty fun stuff. out
Oh,
Yeah, we just
no,
shot
in
50
Georgia,
BMG a couple weeks ago.
yeah.
There's a range
Oh,
in
yeah.
Georgia where you can shoot full auto.
cool.
It's great. Really expensive. but it's great.
Yeah, there's a thing they do at the DEF CON, which is the hacker convention, where like in the early days they go out into the Mojave and they set up a bunch of guns. And when I went there several years ago, man, it's like 8 years ago maybe now. This guy had a like belt-fed 7.62, I think, and it was like you got to pay for the rounds yourself and then have at it. So we had big boxes of belts, and it's like
M24.
I don't know which gun it was.
M240,
He had like 3 different ones, and they were just like people were like, it was awesome. Yeah.
Yeah, we did that this place down went with Ashley St. Clair, and we were outside of Houston. They call it Hella Bacon, where you can actually get permits to go up and do this. It's a company that runs it. It's totally not a commercial, et cetera, et cetera. But so they do one range day where you can just, anything you want to shoot, literally anything, up to and including a minigun.
RPG?
Oh, man.
Yeah.
You can shoot an RPG?
No, not an RPG. Not
Like,
RPG.
come
Excuse
on.
me. No, not an RPG. And then the next day, you get up super early in a helicopter. They take you up to shoot wild hogs.
Yes.
With full auto AR-15s, and you're flying over the ranch, and the ranches want you
Full
to do
auto
this.
AR-15s?
Full auto
So
AR-15s.
they're modified or what?
They're modified. It's like fire.
Wow.
Yeah.
Isn't that just an M16?
No, because they're still the compact.
They make right. Yeah, a lot of people don't understand how bad hogs are.
It's
Yeah,
horrible. So the
everywhere.
ranchers want you up there doing it, right? This is an invasive species. They are pests. They tear it up. They
kill.
They kill.
Yeah.
They can go
Yeah.
after livestock, and so. But it's wild, and people don't realize the culture difference because on your way to these ranches, you're flying there and you're up in the air above. I'm looking down. I'm like, there's a town right below me, right? And it's Texas, so you pop off there, you're gonna start shooting back.
This is my thing on the Great Reset. I'm
But
kind of like
it's totally different from the East Coast kind of mentality.
if the Great Reset is limited to if you live in big cities, you eat the bugs and live in the pod. I'll be like, okay. Like if you have a choice to live in these awful places, sure,
Yeah,
whatever.
here's the
People can
thing.
choose to do that.
There
know?
are always going to be hogs to hunt. It is impossible to get rid of them. It's impossible to get rid of them.
Oh,
It's
we
open
were up
season
there-
on them basically everywhere where
We-
they exist, and they still can't
were
keep
up
the numbers
there.
down.
We were up there for hours, and they just kept coming. Like
Yeah.
we stopped because we were running low on fuel, and we were like,
Well,
all right, we got to flight out.
Anybody who's familiar with any kind of MMORPG knows that there's hogs
they're
everywhere.
just respawning.
Yeah,
They're
yeah,
just
exactly.
respawning.
That's how
Yeah.
you level up.
So
Right,
I
exactly.
know. So my level, I came in pretty low. Like I was like
gained
novice
a
level.
lot of experience.
As much South Park got this wrong. You can't just kill hogs, boars to level up because once you're a few levels above them, you stop getting experience for doing it.
You were well rested though, so you got an XP bonus while you
Yeah,
were
exactly. Yeah, absolutely. That's right.
That's hilarious.
Eventually, got to go for the most dangerous game,
like the boss hog.
the boss hog,
You got to find the boss hog.
the
Shout out to
giant 20-foot.
And we were after. So they had coyotes as well.
hunting coyotes.
We had coyotes out there as well. Yeah.
You know what they need? Wolves.
we can find them.
The issue is that in a lot of places, with wolves being displaced because they were a threat to us, right?
Right.
And so they fled. Then you get invasive species running rampant. Deer population explodes. Man, people don't understand why you hunt deer, and they're in these city
It's
people.
also true.
Yeah, I'll put it this way: I'd be willing to bet. Let's do a study that if you went to a city and asked this question. Okay, here's a question for you, Jack. You see a butterfly caught in a spider's web. Do you free it?
Me personally, no.
Why not?
Because I know that spider is going to be there. It's going to then consume the butterfly and all those other pests and gnats, and I don't know if a spider would go after a cicada, but maybe, right?
So the
the
idea
spider
is
is a filtration system essentially.
right. I'd be willing to bet that if you go to a city, or if you go to like a liberal and ask, they'd free the butterfly, whereas a conservative wouldn't. Because obviously we understand the beauty of the butterfly. I could be wrong. I could be totally wrong about this. Maybe liberals are just ruthless and they're like, kill them both or something crazy. I don't really think that. I think they typically would be like, the butterfly is an important pollinator and it's beautiful and a part of nature and it shouldn't die to a spider. The spider can eat anything else. And so a lot of conservatives would probably just be like, circle of life, the spider eats the bugs, eats the pests, butterfly or not. So that's a difference in mentality. I think about, so we're city folk out here. We had a deer feeder. And they were like, oh, you're going to kill some deer? And we're like, no, I'm just going to feed them. I'm like, why? They're pests. no, they're awful.
Yeah,
we
that's
hate them.
that's exactly what it was like in
They
Texas.
overpopulate.
Exactly.
They
Yeah.
destroy crops. They destroy
Yep.
trees. They the population levels need to be kept down. Otherwise, they get diseased and ridden
Yeah.
with like nasty
They
parasites.
starve to death.
And so they're like, don't just feed them. And I'm like, well, the good news is they don't like the deer feeder. The birds do. And they're like, oh, the birds are fine.
Hey, we had this growing up. Valley Forge Park was always a huge place for us to go on weekends. Ended up actually got engaged, got married right near there. And but because it's federal protected, it's a federal park, right, national park, the deer know this. And so they know if they go in, they go in there, right? Well, they know that like this is like a safe area, right? So you get to the point where, I mean, when it's dusk, you like can't drive around, right? Because the deer are everywhere and they're tearing up all this stuff. And a lot of the land right there, that's actual, some of it's some of these dirt forts and different fortifications that were made by the actual Continental Army under George Washington during that winter. So Philadelphia has fallen. The British have taken it. This is prior to the crossing of the Delaware and the Battle of Trenton, and so just before that, I should say. And so, these deer are tearing up actual U.S. history, but and this is Pennsylvania, so people are like, so can we go after the deer, please? And the federal government had to do this whole like permit system to let people go in, and then hire guys from like the USDA to come in. So there's actually like a deer death squad, basically.
Wow.
And I believe it's under USDA. If I'm right, it's like years ago. And I'm like, how do you?
They're walking around
sign
armed?
up for? Oh yeah.
Which department are you with? USDA. You step aside. The deer's
Step
ours.
aside, kid, man. Step aside, baby.
I hope you're all sitting down because this might infuriate you, but this morning I saw a deer and it was eating our mulberries.
What?
Whoa.
It was eating
Whoa.
our mulberries.
Tim,
Whoa.
what are guns for?
I know.
That's right.
Defending the mulberry.
The mulberry.
And I was shaking like, I
Reservation.
can't kill Bambi. And it was like, your mulberries
Tim,
are mine.
Don't worry. It was Bambi's mom.
Oh, okay.
There you go.
That's
Yeah,
okay.
yeah, yeah.
That's
So,
that's like Simpsons. Don't let their bovine nature fool you, Timmy. Given the chance, a cow would kill you and your entire family.
We have pawpaw trees out here. Do you guys know what pawpaws are? They're like, I guess they're like mango and banana combined.
Oh
People describe
yeah,
it as.
yeah. I know what you're talking about.
It's like the only that fruit of that type in North America or something. So we have this tree, and I remember seeing like the deer were always crowding on our driveway because there's a tree right there, and in August and September, or whatever, all these fruits are there, and they're in the middle of the road. So no, for real, like when you're coming down at night, there's no street lights or anything.
No.
You got to be real careful, and then you see them standing there. They're really dumb.
Yep.
They just like they'll walk up to the car and just stare at you as you're like heading like, what's this? I'm like,
Yeah, like we
Ow.
talk about Darwin Awards, but no, really.
there's just too many of them. We got turkeys too. We got a lot of turkeys.
Yeah, I've seen them
Same-
walking around in the woods, dude.
Yeah,
They
same.
gang up on you. They're around you like.
Yeah, they
Like-
walk up to you, start pushing. You're like,
Just talking smack. You're like, all right, I'm trying to get back to the house.
I was unprepared for how well you gobble.
No, but it's the same thing when you talk to people out here. They're like, turkeys, huh? We can help you out with that. And I'm like, what's the problem? They're like, turkeys are pests. Like you got to get rid of them.
They're like, turkeys are bad people, Tim. Like, you don't understand.
Then like they have like a
We-
video
we-
of turkeys
we don't like
spray
their
painting on
kind
property.
around
and-
here.
Yeah.
Turkeys are just spray painting and
And
vandalizing
then and
property.
it's like the beginning of one of those cop shows, and you see that. Yeah, it's the turkeys.
Of course, it was the turkeys. He just like sniffed.
Dude,
Turkeys were out. Well, this
someone saw a mountain lion out here. Yeah, out where we're at.
Not cool.
Really?
Yeah.
Like really.
Yeah. Which is I don't know why it's rare. It
Nasty.
happens.
Yeah.
But we were told that on this side of the river because if you guys have ever played any MMORPG, you know that certain mobs can only spawn on certain sides of the river. Like if you're
Different
in
zones.
Yeah, like if you're in Elwyn Forest, you know that the boars and the gnolls don't spawn in Darkshire, and the ghouls don't spawn in Elwyn. So across the river from us, there's like bears, and it's like way more serious because it's West Virginia. But in the Maryland side, they're like, you don't got to worry about anything. It's like deer. It's like really low level stuff. But every so often, a bear or a bobcat or a mountain lion will be spotted. And so people were saying like, not too far from here in this area in Western Maryland, they spotted a mountain lion or whatever. So they're like, you got to be careful. Now think about that. You live out one of these houses. You get an alert. You see on Facebook, like, guys, we got a report from the local authorities. There's a mountain lion spotted in the area. Please be armed and safe. Think about that. Please be armed and safe.
Yeah.
And now you get these laws. Hey, AR-15, come on, man. Ain't nobody need 15, 10 rounds. Yeah. And then people are like, if you can't hit it in 10 rounds, you shouldn't be shooting at it. Oh, okay. So I'm not a
They sure showed
professional.
us.
I'm not a professional military man or law enforcement guy, but I want to keep my friends and family safe from a mountain lion.
Tim,
and if
you
it
don't
takes me more, look,
understand.
maybe I'm really bad, and I'm like trying to
Yes.
protect myself from a mountain lion. yeah, maybe I need to have a standard capacity magazine of 30 rounds.
If
Well,
you're
I
not a
mean,
marksman, your whole family should die if someone breaks in.
That's right.
If a mountain lion breaks in.
Given that situation, I mean, you know, I have like a military background, but I've never considered myself to be like, you know, like there's certain, I don't know, like as you call them, influencers, pundits out there that are like really focused on Second Amendment and shooting, and like that's their whole thing. I love them; they're great guys. I've always been more like the current events, breaking news kind of guy. But just to, you know, defend the AR-15 for a second, right? That you're talking about a firearms platform where the reason so many people use it is because it is versatile and because it is something that has a great accuracy for someone who is a hobbyist, for someone who is, you know, just getting into guns, that you're going to have a better propensity for actually hitting your target rather than you're using like a Glock or a 45 or any 9mm, any handgun, right? Certainly at a greater distance, right? You are going to put your rounds on target in a safer, more controlled situation with an AR-15 than you would with almost any other firearm out there. Speaking generally.
Think about this. You guys remember the story about the guy who went to the Empire State Building and then like it was like a revenge killing and it was a disgruntled employee?
No.
So he goes to the Empire State Building. He's all angry and then he takes a handgun and he shoots a bunch of people. He leaves the building and the NYPD, they run up to stop him and they start firing wildly, hitting like 7
Oh yeah, I
or so
remember that
people.
part of the story.
When was this?
Let me see if I can pull it
2 or 3 years
up.
ago, I think.
I totally don't remember this.
It's kind of tragic. I think 7 people got hit. That's my guess.
But
Let me see if I can find this one.
I'm guessing it's 7 people other than the guy.
They didn't
Since
hit the guy.
2012, all Empire State shooting victims were wounded by officers, according to
Jeez.
police.
Wow.
So on a busy Friday morning, and let's pull this off. Let's jump into this story.
Yeah.
All right,
How
so
long
this
ago
is
did this happen?
this is CNN
2012.
from 2012,
Okay.
What month?
August. And then, so they say
I was in training for Gitmo back then, so I missed a couple.
all Empire State shooting victims were wounded by officers. On a busy Friday morning in Manhattan, 9 pedestrians suffered bullet or fragment wounds after police unleashed a hail of gunfire at a man walking with a .45 caliber pistol who had just killed a former coworker. The officers unloaded 16 rounds in the shadow of the Empire State Building at a disgruntled former apparel designer, killing him after he engaged in a gun battle with police, authorities said. 3 passersby sustained direct gunshot wounds, while the remaining 6 were hit by fragments, according to the New York Police Commissioner Ray Kelly. All injuries were caused by police. All injuries were caused by police. One officer shot 9 rounds and another shot 7. Police identified the gunman as Jeffrey Johnson, 58, who was apparently laid off from his job as a designer of women's accessories at Hazan Import Co. last year. Johnson served in the U.S. Coast Guard in the mid-'70s, had 2 rounds left in his pistol. It holds 8, Kelly said. Now, I just want to point something out. What do you think would have happened if those officers had rifles, AR-15s?
I mean, you can never say, right? But if they're going at range and this guy's moving, if he's being furtive, if he's trying to, use cover and concealment, they would have had a better, just talking based on the numbers, they would have had a better chance of hitting him directly with the AR-15.
And let's not even say a 5.56. Let's say the police were given a short barrel 9mm worth of stock. Like, come on, man. I understand we want the cops to be armed. These cops.
Oh, well, they would say militarization of police.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah, that would be the
So they're
response.
saying
Like
the cops, a Glock 17 or whatever, and these cops miss. It's not an easy thing to do. They complain about police and police brutality. It's like, okay, then give them a short-barreled rifle or AR pistol with a stock, and they will be way more accurate. They will one shot fired, guys down. Stop the murderer dead in his tracks as he started shooting at cops. Less bullets fired, more accurate. This is a good example of, like what you're saying.
That's exactly what I'm talking about. Yeah,
it's not just the idea of militarization of police. It's the idea of AR-15s are dangerous. It's like, dude, people with handguns, I'll admit, I mean, maybe it's just me, but rifle's way easier. I go to the range and I can hit everything with the AR-15.
Well, you've got a you've got a longer barrel, so
and stabilizing
it's more stable. It's more it's more forgiving basically for those little mistakes. With a 4-inch barrel on a handgun, right? You got to be front sight focus. You got to be dead on. You have to have your T all the way across.
This is what real quick. This is what people don't understand is that they assume an AR-15 is firing 5.56. It's like you get a 9mm rifle.
Yeah, there are different variants.
Yeah, or a 45 subsonic, slower and.
Yep.
More accurate.
Also, I mean, the vast majority of gun violence
Scary
is
black
committed
gun.
the vast majority of gun violence is committed with handguns.
Oh, yeah.
All rifles combined, including the AR-15, kill fewer people every year than hammers do.
Yeah.
Oh.
I think sharks too,
It's
right?
incredibly rare. I don't know about sharks.
Yeah, that's the thing, and this is what that judge actually in California recently, who struck down the firearms ban, the assault, quote unquote, assault weapons ban. Yeah, which it's funny because like I'll go to like any gun store online, you type in assault weapon, I can't seem to
they won't
find.
sell you one.
They won't sell you one. I
They'll
don't get
sell
it.
defense weapons. It's weird.
All day
They won't
long,
sell you
but
assault
assault weapons?
weapons.
Yeah. I can't find it. I
it's
can't
it's
find
weird.
it.
I walked into a store and I was like, "Hello, sir. I would like to buy one assault weapon." And the man said, "That's not that,
One
that
of
doesn't
assault
exist.
weapon,
What-
please.
One assault weapon, please."
One weapon for assault? They're like, leave
Sir,
right now.
what are you
So
going to
the
assault?
words you're saying don't
Right, so the
don't make
judge,
sense.
in this case, in that if you, I haven't gone through the whole thing. It's really long opinion that he wrote, that he put down. But the first part of it, which was driving, sort of like the anti-gun types nuts. He said it's called it like a Swiss Army knife, and he said it's like a Swiss Army knife because it's there when you need it, and it solves so many different. Different situations, different problems, different challenges that arise, and the vast majority of this, he's like, this is the most popular gun in the United States. The vast majority of people who use this never use it to commit a crime. They are lawful. They are law-abiding. They're using it safely for lawful, legal purposes.
This is exactly what I've been trying to tell people about my Barrett M82. Like what happens if, like, I don't know, an international band of terrorists that, like,
exactly.
like the Fast and the Furious crew, they're fighting, and then I see this helicopter, and I'm like, look, I got to protect my property from this
100%.
international cabal led
Yes.
by Charlize Theron, and so I've got a 50 BMG. You never know.
When
and she's
she's
not going to
in
be
a
able to
mood.
hit you from the helicopter.
I do love this though because like we posted the vlog where I have the Barrett. I mean it's a 50 BMG and we were shooting at a plate or whatever. And then these lefties are like,
thought you were
"What are you
saying-
going to hunt with that?"
For
And
half-
I was like, "What does hunting have to do with anything?"
Yeah.
Like
Hunting.
You
yeah,
said
hunting.
plate, but for half a second I thought you said plane. It's like,
No,
Tim, what are you doing?
plates.
What are you
Plates.
Just
Steel
did a flag
plates.
Yeah,
up.
steel plates.
We were hoping that it would vaporize the target. Like it would, because the steel plate was rated for 308, and we're like, if we hit this, it's probably gonna blow up. We one person, Dan, got a glancing shot, so it just dented it. But it was also on a wooden, it was mounted, so it absorbed a lot of the hit. And
There's some places you
didn't
can
blow up.
go where I've done, and this is in West Virginia, where they'll let you do like abandoned cars.
Oh man,
With
my
like the
gosh.
glass in and everything. Yeah, we had like a BMW and a Mercedes, and we were like, take that 1%. It was awesome.
class war.
I also got to at one point with one of these things, and they just buy these junk cars for you to be able
Yeah.
to use. And for tactical training, they actually got, one of the trainings we went through was firing a handgun from the driver's seat through the windshield at a target.
Ooh, whoa.
And so learning how the angle of the windshield versus if your target, your target's here, so you want to shoot center mass, but because of the angle of deflection, you actually want to kind of fire down in a
Wow.
sense.
And it bends it up?
So that it bends, so it hits the glass and bends
Refraction
up.
in action.
Crazy.
Yeah, refraction in action, very good.
And people need, that's crazy.
It was awesome. It was just amazing.
I always tell people behind the engine block. All right.
Yeah.
Behind
Oh,
the
yeah.
engine block.
Oh, yeah.
You don't. So you could do these tests where they'll have the car.
That
and
was
then they'll-
in the George Floyd Square. That was when the shooting broke
Right.
out. You can actually hear, and I'm guessing it's some security who's there with like, it was like some British or
Yeah.
foreign reporter, and he like doesn't know what to do, and here's this guy just go, get behind the engine block, go, and that's don't hide behind the doors, and don't ever do that.
in the movies, the cops are literally behind the door, and I'm
Yeah,
like,
no.
dude, that's
Yeah.
like a millimeter of like
Well,
steel or
some
aluminum.
police cars will have some
Yeah.
armor there, but yeah, just don't assume your car isn't up armored. If God forbid you're ever in this situation, engine block all day long. However, I don't know if you guys wanted to get into this, the engine block is also what allows for pit maneuvers to take place. That
that
police-
video that
police
came
can-
out.
So it's the same idea. Because yes, the engine block is this large chunk of metal, right? That's right in the front of the car, but that's also what leaves a car's weight balance completely off, right? And so your trunk's never going to have more weight than the engine block.
There's this video that's going viral where a cop is trying to pull over this woman for some like minor traffic violation, and he
I think
decides
she's speeding. I think
she was speeding. So he decides to murder her, to just straight up kill the woman.
What?
So I'm being a bit hyperbolic. He performs a pit maneuver and flips her vehicle over and crashes it, and then he walks over and she's like, help, and he's like pulling her out of the overturned vehicle.
And
writing her a ticket as she's
Yeah,
you're not even.
Slaps
I
the ticket on
I
her.
wouldn't even describe it like that. So she clearly slows, like she's I would say she's speeding, right? Because I watched the whole video. I mean, she definitely looks like she's speeding. I can't see any of the other cars on the road, so you don't know if she's like going up much faster than everybody else. She's clearly going too fast for conditions. So he goes to pull her, puts the blinkers on. So, but then there's no like shoulder, right? There's no safe spot for her to get off. So she puts her turn signal on as if she's looking for an exit, but no exit appears. So she slows down, and there's a very noticeable change in her rate of speed at this point in the video. And she puts her emergency lights on, right? Like, hey, I understand. Like, she's clearly signaling to the officer that, you know, I acknowledge that you were behind me, that you have your lights on, and she's like just looking for somewhere to do that safely, which you would think. And he decides to write this up as if she's fleeing and says, like, hey, I've got a fleeing suspect. I'm within my rights here. I'm going to execute a pit maneuver. So for people who don't know, a pit maneuver is when you use that, again, as I was talking about, that weight that imbalance that exists in all cars that, you know, except for you can still do it, but the ones that don't have, some cars have the engine in the rear. Some Volkswagens used to have that.
Teslas.
Yeah, Teslas.
Can't do it.
Yeah, you wouldn't be able to do it. So, you know, another reason to have Elon Musk on. And so you use that weight of your engine block to essentially smack the back of another car and have it spin out of control. Now, in the proper setting, the car is just supposed to spin around so that you don't, so that it can't travel forward, and then it stops the vehicle, stops forward progress. What happens here is he attempts a pit maneuver while the car is already close to the shoulder, right? So that's one of those, like a Derek Chauvin thing, where like, is that how they teach you to do a pit maneuver? Because where's the car going to spin? It's obviously going to smack into the shoulder, which it does, then crosses the lanes, hits the other shoulder head on. The car flips. It's an SUV, flips over. So already a lot of weight imbalance issues inherent in SUVs. I used to drive an H2 for this radio station I worked for, and it was like the worst possible thing to ever drive in, right?
I can imagine.
Any conditions, and this thing is like wobbling all over the road. Like the death traps, absolute death traps. But hey, billboard on wheels, right? And so he gets out of the car, and he's like strolling up to this thing.
What
where
the heck?
You know, and it's one of those, look, I don't know what he was thinking. I don't want to describe intention based off a video, but looks bad. Looks really bad. Looks really bad that he does not seem very, you know, worried that, you know, he's just flipped a car over and potentially somebody could be injured, dead, or anything. And I'm sure this will come up in the case, but he also doesn't seem to perceive a threat, because he doesn't, and I go back and watch the video, but he doesn't appear to have his gun drawn, and he's not thinking like, oh, this is some hardened criminal that, you know, I have to be worried about. So his gun's not drawn. He's not approaching stealthily or anything like that. He's just sort of it's the weirdest thing. He's just walking.
It's like he's in shock, like he thinks he killed somebody.
No, he seems like indifferent.
I don't even see that. And again, you know, that's me looking at a couple seconds of video. I can't tell. I'm not going to try to mind read
It
somebody.
looked
I don't
like
think that's fair.
The cop was in the right lane,
But
and
it doesn't
she
look
had
good.
to exit, so she sped up to pass him to get into the right lane to exit, rather than slow down to get behind him to exit. Like, that's an awkward situation where you need to exit and someone's on your right, and you got to either.
Well, I don't think there's an exit at all in the video. I don't think there's any exit that comes up. Like, there's nowhere for her to go, basically.
Yeah.
And
Crazy,
and it's one of those ones where it's like, at that point, but if that were me, and I know that there's a cop behind me with his lights on, I would just pull it over in the shoulder. If I really couldn't find anywhere, because I know that, you know, other cars are going to see that, and I'm not getting out of my car anyway. So if he really wants me to pull over, and there legitimately isn't anywhere to go, I would just pull over his shoulder.
Yeah, I would. Well, how about we take super chats, everybody? If you have
Alrighty.
not already and you like the show, you got to smash that like button. It really does help. Subscribe to this channel. Share the show with your friends if you think it's important and the conversations we have are important. And go to timcast.com, become a member. We'll have a bonus segment coming up. We usually put them up around 11 p.m. And maybe you've noticed we publish them immediately, so that as soon as the video is done encoding after it's uploaded, you'll be able to watch it. But that means if you get there too early, it's like you're watching the encoder process. It's better than us sitting around and like just not publishing it for an hour, and then you have to wait a longer amount of time. But hey, it is what it is. Go to timcast.com, sign up. Really excited for the newsroom and some of the people we're bringing on. We're going to have more consistent merch. We're going to be expanding everything. It's going to be fantastic. We want to do mini documentaries, and we just need to get the leadership staff who are going to be able to handle that. It's not easy. Let's read some of these super chats, and don't forget, smash that like button.
Smash it.
All right. Hung Drizzt with the most true and correct super chat ever. He said, Tim Pool is the greatest artist of our generation. Seriously, though, can't
That's
wait
not
until
true at
Blue
all.
Cities. Excuse me.
Oh,
Excuse me.
I'm going to let you finish, but FreedomToons is the greatest artistic endeavor of all time.
Excuse me. No. Hung Drizzt says Tim Pool is the greatest artist, and he is the greatest. He's the best. Everyone knows. Everyone agrees.
Bunk.
Fake news.
And then Hung Drizzt comes out and says, I take it back. No, he's dumb. He's the worst. Everybody knows it. He says, can't wait.
Follow up super chat, not
Yeah, right.
JK.
That's how we get people to just keep giving more money.
Yeah.
But frankly, I think he's
Yeah.
actually awful. He was the worst. No one agrees.
Yeah, if you guys want, we would do whole super chat threads where
We'll
you guys
argue
just
with
keep
you if
putting
you give
in.
us
We
money.
will have
Yeah.
debates.
Keep super chatting.
Yeah.
We'll
Control yourself.
Keep it coming, fam.
Guys, can we
Hung-
get up to 7,000 likes? Because it's 6.2 right now. That's
Oh,
all
yeah,
I'm
yeah,
asking.
yeah.
Can we get to 10,000?
Can we get to 10,000? Can we get 10,000?
I didn't even
likes?
share this.
And
I
thought- 5
also,
million.
also YouTube.com/FreedomToons, guys.
It's,
You know
it's
what I mean?
actually
get us to
it's
650,000.
Seamus's birthday.
It's
So
at some point this year it is.
Yeah, indeed.
And, so if you all hit that like button just for me, at some point I was born.
that reminds me of the Rick and Morty thing where he's like, what does he ask him? What's 9 times 8? And he's
More
like,
than 7.
at least 42. That's exactly right. It is at least
That's right.
42 or something like that. All right. Hung Drizzt says, can't wait until the blue cities feel the economic burden from ostracization of unvaxxed. Fuzzy Bunny says, 55.
Schwiggity schwab.
Have you seen that viral video where the woman gets a scam call and she answers it like a robot? Thank you for calling eBay customer service. It was so good because she's like, to continue, press 55. And then you hear boop, boop, like the actually hit 55. It's great. And then it shows, you guys remember 55 from Group X?
No.
Come on. You know that, Seamus?
Wait, 55?
55.
Schwiggity schwab.
Yes.
55.
Boom.
Schwiggity schwab, 55.
Yeah,
Of
somebody's
course.
got
Come on.
taste. That's why Seamus makes funny videos, because he knows what he's talking
Because
about.
I barely remember that video. I just remember it was like I just remember like a little animation.
I just want bang, bang,
from-
bang.
Oh my gosh, I don't remember that part. I can't recommend it. It's bad. But,
All right. Let's. We got. I'll fight you naked. Says. Letter,
What? Excuse me?
Just getting started.
I'd
Letter-
rather not. No, thank you.
letter to a woke heart says. Has anyone at Timcast read it? It's short. Anybody read Letter to a Woke Heart?
Negative.
Who wrote that?
I don't know. I can look it up.
Andy Stone says. Ben Lee the trucker says hi. Hi Ben.
Oh,
Lee.
hi, Ben.
Hey,
Ben's my friend.
Hey, there you go.
Yeah.
Nice.
Reality Hijack says. Poso, when you gonna tell Bannon to come to the mansion and do a podcast?
That was the same question I got last time. No, he's up in New York right now. He ended up not even coming back to DC, so he's stuck in New York, and he literally will not leave this hotel. That
I
he's
have his
staying at.
mug.
You have his mug?
I somehow ended up with literally his mug.
That's amazing.
Someone who knew him took it from his house or something, and then like someone else was hanging out with him and then got it.
He did. Big deal though. Huge deal. First haircut he's gotten in like 2 years. He just it's not. Yeah, it's not. If you're watching the show, it's not. Doesn't have it back. That's an actual haircut. So kudos to him for that.
All right, let's read some more. We got Anthony Campos says Biden is bought by China. With him as pres, going to war with them makes no sense. It costs millions for rallies that Trump is about to do. Makes me think who really is in charge. Tinfoil hat, please.
Yes.
A tinfoil hat. Nicholas Hooker says, did you see Ashley Babbitt's family is suing to release the identity of the officer who killed her? Also vote Chiartarelli for NJ governor.
Oh.
I think I did hear that was news a little while ago, right? The family was suing.
Yeah, I think that I know there's a lot of speculation over, is it this officer, is it that officer? I have to imagine in that lawsuit that name's going to come out.
Yeah.
Hope so.
Jason Kyutu says, big ups to Cast Castle. Entertaining for sure seeing the pad. Hoping members' events showcase Tim's speakeasy and casino gaming operation in the basement of Secret Bunker. We shall persevere.
Yes.
We actually have a poker table. Yeah, but it's the gaming table. So if we're playing Magic or a board game, you've got like it's a cushion on the edge, and you can have a cup holder. But I was also thinking, we'll play little fun, silly poker games, and like we have tokens for the slot machine in the arcade. so you can like win that stuff.
Listen, Sky Matheson never tells anybody where the game's going to be, but the action's always here, and the action's always here in the Tim Pool house.
That's the thing. I just want to mention something. We're up to 7.7K likes. That's great, but it is not what we agreed to, ladies and gentlemen. Let's get 10,000 likes on this video.
It is Seamus's birthday at some point this year.
At some point this year, it's going to be my birthday. And speaking of,
Some
but
point.
you know what I'm even more proud of? Not quite, but very proud of. The video that Tim and I just released where Tim voices Dr. Fauci, it was hysterical. We almost cried laughing recording
We
it.
did.
And it's
We
up. It's
were
on the internet.
crying
We did.
laughing.
Yeah.
We were crying laughing. Lydia was there.
Were there
She
any
can vouch.
were there any specific words that that came up, like any one?
Droplets coming from my eyes.
I was
You guys
crying.
have to watch this video. I was very proud of it. Tim and I were crying laughing. And also, for people who support the show at patreon.com/FreedomToons, you can watch the behind the scenes of us recording it, crying laughing.
So
we
funny.
used this setup right here to do the VO because like after the show finished, I was like, "Oh, Seamus, do you have that VO you want me to read?" So we just turned the camera on and filmed it, and you can hear Seamus being like, say it like this, and I'm like, okay, and then I redo it. And it's
Well, the whole thing is great because it's like a kid and he's breaking up with Dr. Fauci as if like I don't want you in my life anymore.
and he's like, if you break up with me, your grandmother will die. And then he's like, that's what I'm
droplets
talking
get
about.
That's
Don't
what we're
give
talking about. You're always hyperbolic.
don't give too much of it away, you guys. No one's
Okay.
gonna watch
No,
it.
we don't give away
It's
this.
like, yeah.
We won't give away.
Droplets.
We won't give away the surprise twist.
And I think there's a sequel, maybe,
Twist.
right?
Oh yeah, we literally improv'd a sequel right after we recorded it, and we honestly I think that was even funnier. Like this one's really funny, but like
That one is funnier, I
Yeah,
think.
I think we were like really crying laughing at the second. It was so over the
And
top.
then
And we were like
after
we were just like coming up with everything on the spot. It was
And then
great.
as we were walking away, Seamus like, no, I got to record one more thing, and he runs back and starts recording again.
I
and-
did, yeah.
And
Yeah,
then
I
I
was
was
like, hold
like,
on,
do I
wait,
gotta
let's try
record
this. Like, what if Trump said this? And then Tim came back. He's like, oh, then I'll say this. Yeah, it was very,
Yes.
it was very organic. It was
cool.
great.
That's
Yeah.
cool.
Well, we'll see. We'll see the sequel comes out. All right, let's see. David Maki says UAP tech can be built in a garage. Prove it to yourself. You can make a capacitor thruster out of a Si/graphene wafer and a laser mirror based on quantized inertia theory and the McBecker and Bott capacitor thruster experience EXP. I have
What?
no idea.
What?
Ian.
Well, what are you using the laser for? To move it around?
I don't know.
I don't know.
Should we
the orb?
Silicon graphene wafer sounds cool though.
That's
Should
right.
we build a
Yeah,
surf
lightweight power source.
a surf like a hovercraft where we can fly?
Yes.
Yes.
Because we can build. I don't want to call it.
Unqualified. Yes.
I don't want to build a quadcopter. Have you seen the flying motorcycle where it's just two big fans? And
Yeah.
The problem is controlling left and right is difficult. That's why people like doing quad. But maybe you could do two small jets on the side, kind of like how the flight suits work. So they're not for lift, they're for stabilization.
Right.
And then you just have the two big in the front and you could, ride it around. Maybe we just build like what the Hobgoblin had or the Green Goblin in
Pretty much,
Spider-Man.
yeah.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, we'll just build that and we'll fly around. And then Ian, you can work on the pumpkin bombs, but we're a family-friendly show, so it'll just be like whipped cream comes out.
Sure, yeah, it's tasty.
Then you could throw cupcakes at people instead.
Sounds
of,
great.
I'll toss them underhand.
Yeah.
Sounds good, yeah.
That'll be over at Cast Castle. This past weekend, I went hunting for cicadas. I have a gun that shoots salt for bugs. And so I was actually catching the cicadas, and then, I was hunting cicadas.
He
I
really
wonder-
got into it. He had like the paint on, and
He
was,
did,
like,
yeah,
the
he
black
did.
thing under
I was
the-
hiding
He's
in the.
like,
I was in a
"Clever
deer
girl."
blind, waiting for the cicada to come out.
There's like a belt of cicada heads.
And then he saw a cicada in front of him, but then one popped out his side. I was like, "Meh," making that cicada noise. He's like, clever girl.
Well, so the actual problem is the bug thing. It doesn't actually hurt the cicadas.
They're
Oh, it
too
just
big.
stuns them?
Yeah.
It doesn't even.
It
Stun
just
them.
makes them angrier, dude. And then they come after you. You don't want an angry cicada on your hands.
I don't.
Dude, there's
Terrifying.
screams. No,
they do.
no,
They scream,
no joke.
dude. One,
Yeah, they
one,
scream, they do.
One landed on me, and I was like poking him to get him off, and he's just sitting there, and I poke him. And, I was like, oh my god! I was like, it's terrifying.
So the lively ones are loud.
Well,
So-
and you get a lot of them together, a whole swarm.
Yep.
You'll go by like a tree. I try to do like a bike ride with my kid once a day, and we'll go under the tree, and it's just like,
yeah, dude. And I saw it was so brutal because
Crazy.
someone here collected a bunch of cicadas in a jar to feed to the chickens, and they just got thrown into the little chicken area.
Chicken
and
City.
the chicken city, and they're just laying on the ground like screaming, and the chickens are just massacring them. And like one chicken is like picking up a cicada and like shaking it around as it's screaming. And I'm like, you know what? This is why I don't feel bad when I eat chicken at all.
Yeah,
Like,
it's horrifying. Wow.
What's that account? Nature's Brutal.
Nature's
Yeah.
Metal. Somebody
Metal.
mentioned in the chat that I am building a Zeppelin. That is true and correct.
Yep.
So if you don't know the story, for like years, Wikipedia had a section where it claimed I invented a Zeppelin for live streaming, which I never did. And so it finally got removed because they were like, what's the source for this? It's like one article from The Guardian. So then I was like, just to make a point, I'm now going to actually do it.
Yes.
And invent it, so they have to put it back. I'm going to retroactively make a fake article true. And then they can like put it back.
Living up to the hype.
What will they do? They're like, this article was fake when it was written, but then he eventually did do this. So do we use this
technically,
article
it's
as
You
the
will
source?
create like a disclaimer paradox where the disclaimer for the original article that they will have run, they'll need to also disclaim, but in the context of a larger, like it'll just be an
At the
entire
time of writing, this was a false
Right,
story, but actually now it's true because he decided to
they're rebunking
one-up
it.
us. Yeah.
So this is like what the Beatles used to do with the Paul is Dead stuff. Do you guys know about that?
Oh yeah.
So it started as, as just sort of this thing that a bunch of like hippie kids at some U.S. college had gotten into. They thought they were secret messages in the Beatles
Yeah,
songs.
if you play it backwards,
Yeah,
it
you
says
play it
Paul is a dead
backwards,
man.
it would
I
say
miss
Paul is
him.
dead, This
Yeah.
is this. But then the Beatles found out about it, and they were like, oh, this is the coolest thing. So they actually started planting secret messages in their songs.
Oh.
And, if you play something backwards, and John Lennon was super big into this, and it was sort of like, is it art imitating reality kind of thing? And it
Yep.
just became this whole, big deal where all of these secret messages we could put in. But I always thought that's actually the story that got me into the Beatles. That like, wow, these guys thought it was so cool that they actually took it to the next level and started doing it because, hey, that's fun.
Yeah. All right, we got Quiet Guitarist Fan says, World Economic Forum, you will own nothing and you will be happy. Neo, I need guns. Lots of guns. Guns are good investments.
Yeah, it's true.
Functional devices, they store them properly, keep them clean, they don't lose their value.
Yes,
They
the
appreciate
World
it.
Economic Forum not only has me blocked on Twitter, but they called me out by name the other day over some.
And you're blocked by them? They're calling you out by
and
name?
I'm blocked, but they're calling me out as this like,
wow.
this known purveyor of whatever.
What?
Because
Yeah,
no,
of
it
whatever.
had to do with the Macron emails from 2017, which were completely true, by the way. Like that was an actual legit leak that we found. But they just labeled disinformation.
But isn't that
on it.
hilarious how you'll find people's actual emails and they'll be like, that's not true.
That's disinformation.
Yeah, dude, I'm like browsing Reddit. If you look at the front page of all, the leftists, how they talk about Fauci's emails, they have no idea what they're talking about.
Yeah.
They've literally not read any of them, don't understand the context. And they're like, there was like one email where he said not to wear masks. It was exactly in line with what he was saying publicly. And I'm like, well, that's true. But the real issue is that there were scientists saying early on they thought it was engineered. Fauci ended up giving these guys grants at some point. What the guy was saying publicly, literally the same day, was the exact opposite of what he was telling Fauci. Like, there's a lot of stuff in there. All right?
So that's a type of, it's a cope, right? But the type of logical fallacy it's a false because, right? So I've created, instead of having to actually think through like me possibly being wrong on something, I can just allow the cognitive dissonance to take over, and the
Yep.
false because will be a shortcut across that to say, well, okay, there was this one, but it wasn't a big deal. Here's why it wasn't a big deal, and therefore, therefore because of that, all of it is not a big deal. Well, that's a false because that only pertains to one.
All right, Stoley Clark says, Tim, I'm challenging you and Ian to a game of two-headed giant commander. Also, everyone, regardless of your opinion, you need to prepare for some crazy times. And why don't you people ever talk about XRP? I don't know a whole lot about XRP, but what I can say is anyone who plays me and Ian a game of two-headed giant commander would regret it.
Yeah, you get messed up.
You get messed up bad.
I don't know about that. I think Jack and I could beat you.
The level of the decks that Ian and I have are so high, we don't like playing each other anymore.
Yep.
Because it's like turn one wins. It's just insane. It's like, oh, he won.
Wow.
He got the mana crypt. He wins. Let's just play a new game. I'll
Yeah.
concede.
Boom.
Well, who goes first? You win.
You win. Good.
So,
you roll. You rolled high.
I've got a
win.
Kiki Jiki deck. It's just absolutely bonkers. I've got Narset's crazy, but that's more about like just locking the board down and being silly. But Urza's just nuts.
Yeah, I think if we did Urza and maybe Thassa, that's just
Thasa's
stop,
dude.
Stop town.
Rashad and Footpay with Thassa, and it's like I win. Everyone sacrifice all your permanents, I win.
I'll counter everything they try to do to stop you from winning.
Well, if
I
you
mean,
have
that's
Urza and you have all of your board on the table, then maybe the Footpad won't get to you.
Dude,
but,
two-headed giants is the best.
we'd
So
wipe the
good.
floor with whoever dared challenge us.
That's it.
No, I think we would win.
You maniac.
Me and Jack against you two. We're doing
Seamus
it.
is going to be like, I'll play the Lawn War Elf, and then Ian's like, I'll drop my whole board with Urza, and I win the game.
I actually don't know anything about this game. I'm just
I've no
talking
idea what you
smack
guys are
because
talking
I know
about.
I don't know
I'm
either.
like-
But any opportunity to argue,
It's the best.
I'll take it.
One of the best card games ever made.
I'm like, how does this pertain to the Rosary?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. I'm like, I actually won't play this
June
game. Jack
June
and I
is the
will.
month of the Sacred Heart of Jesus.
That's right. It is. No, it
I-
actually is.
I love this conspiracy theory. The Physicality channel says, do we have any proof this is actually live? Yes.
Well, they just
I
asked that
mean-
question and you read it out loud. I assume they asked it
Yeah,
recently.
wouldn't that be
be
proof?
I would think so.
Define
yeah.
me.
How do,
Proof.
can I
It's
say
certainly
Like, isn't
evidence.
isn't the super chat itself proof it's live? I guess they think we get super chats sent to us in advance.
We read people's
Well,
minds.
now it's
yeah.
proven for them, but I guess for everybody else.
Yeah. What do we?
Right.
What, I don't know. It's 9:48 p.m.
Yeah, I checked the time. I
Then
don't
they're
know.
like,
Yeah.
you timed that perfectly,
you timed
so
that
when
exactly
it went up,
that you knew. Keep sending super chats and you'll find out.
Yeah.
we should. You know what I'm gonna do? I want to design a clock that it'll be like your standard. You know, what's a clock called? That's just like a standard clock because it's like a digital numeric clock.
Analog.
Clock?
Analog
Yeah.
clock. But I want to have it so that like every 5 minutes the arms randomly pull to a different position.
Dude,
Right.
what if there was a clock that no matter when you
Just
looked
behind
at
you.
it always showed you what time it was now? So like if the clock was on video and recorded, you look at it now and it would show now's time.
How would
even
that-
though
what?
I don't know, it'd be some new technology.
Ian, what are you talking about?
Like perma clocks or like ever clocks. Or
Get
something.
that orb away from
That would
me.
be a multi-
Lydia, would you get over here?
That would be a multi-dimensional clock because if Seamus is watching and someone else is watching, it'd be a different.
Ian, that's just what happens in
That's
a
a quantum
dream.
clock. That's a quantum clock.
Oh, I love that you
What
guys
I
are
want-
into
Quantum
this.
clock. Yeah.
Can someone who can build this? Ian, can you build us a clock where instead of actually telling time, every 5 minutes the arms randomly jump to a different position?
Yeah.
Hold.
Yes.
Sure.
So then, like during the show, the arms will just be like randomly. Like people are like,
That's
"What?
a great
what's
idea.
going
Dude,
on?" Like
but
it's
you
not
already
live.
said it on air. That'd be so fantastic to do. So just like the audience is like, what is going on?
What's
Yeah.
happening?
This is not live. How can it be? The clock is. Well, we'll start thinking about things like that. Maybe we can do like. Wait, I shouldn't say any more ideas.
Okay, good.
Yeah,
Right,
dude,
right,
we've got
right,
some
yeah.
fantastic ideas that, like, if you ever say them on air, you'll ruin them.
Like
We've talked
Seamus's
about-
clothes just
No,
changed.
it comes back.
All right.
to me wearing a
Let's
tux.
read some more. Unholy Prophet says, I'm 30 and I own my own house and my mom lives next door. It's like the show loves. It's like the show Everyone Loves Raymond. There you go. And I bet she comes over when she wants to borrow a cup of sugar. And she calls you Unholy Prophet. Unholy, you come over here and bring me a cup of sugar.
Yeah,
I'm making
I gotta
cookies.
say, my mom just got a place that's right down the street from us, and with the kids, it's great. I mean, that's
Oh, yeah, I believe it.
that is sort of the traditional, setup, right?
Mhm.
So that it's multi-generational.
Yeah.
Families live close, right? You're not just shipping outsourcing your childcare to some stranger or
Yeah, that's exactly it.
somebody you found on
Grandparents.
care.com. It's grandparents. It's amazing. They love the kids. They know the kids. It's theirs, right?
Mhm.
And I love it.
All right, we got
100%.
Nova Zero says, Antifa are pests, not bugs. Don't eat Antifa, no protein whatsoever. Use pesticides like tear gas. Enjoy. Also, have you seen how big Australian bush roaches are? I have not.
I'm sure they're huge.
Yeah, Antifa
You
kind
actually
of
have
remind
to
me.
hunt them with an AR. Sorry.
Antifa remind me of cicadas in many ways.
They're very loud.
The screams, right?
Yeah.
So the screams is a big part of it.
A chicken could defeat them?
The way that chicken could the swarms, right? The swarms that are absolutely they are an invasive species. They're
They
certainly
think
an
gender is a
invasive
social
species.
construct. You ever get
Yes.
alone with a cicada dude? Their political opinions are all out of whack.
Right, and they will not stop talking about them.
They just all the time.
And for some reason, they can just automatically generate Molotov cocktails.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, we got Rob Lurson says, breaking, JBS paid $11 million in Bitcoin ransom to cyber criminals who last week knocked out plants that process 1/5 of the nation's meat supply, Wall Street Journal.
Wow.
Oh, that's only going to get worse.
The thing that killed me with the Colonial Pipeline was when the CEO was testifying yesterday and admitted that said, well, they asked him and Senator Hawley, I think it was Senator Hawley actually asked him, well, why didn't you just go in manually and turn on the pipeline? You guys see this one? And he responded that, well, essentially all the workers that know how to operate the pipeline manually are either retired or deceased at this point.
Oh my god.
Yeah, it's
And
depressing.
we actually didn't have the capability of operating it manually anymore.
That's insane.
Yeah, that's not good.
So
I would say so. Yeah, I would
really-
agree with you on that. Yeah.
All right, we got Chris Bali says, Tim, I keep hearing you refer to NC as an East Coast state. While it is on the East Coast, it is a southern state that is very conservative. Most people here have rejected COVID measures, FYI. I refer to it as an East Coast state because it's very easy to get to North Carolina from North Carolina to New York. So if New York implements all these restrictions, there's probably a lot of people in North Carolina who are like driving up to New York or even driving through New York. Maybe you aren't going on vacation or something. It's not like you're in Los Angeles and it's like a 6-hour flight.
There is kind of this like regionalization of the term East Coast. Like you wouldn't consider Florida an East
How
Coast
dare
state,
you?
even though it is.
I live in Georgia,
Yeah,
and I consider myself a
it
coastal
is,
elite.
but people wouldn't say that,
Coastal
right?
elite.
When they
right.
say East Coast, they kind of mean like Mid-Atlantic Northeast.
Yeah, I get it. I'm just making a geographical reference because like,
Yeah.
I admittedly, what is it, like 16 hours New York to Florida or something? Or is it 24?
Yes.
It's not that bad.
No, it's not 24.
No, it's like 16, right?
Yeah.
Maybe 18.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I've done Florida to DC to Florida. Yeah.
Yeah. All right, let's see. B13SR, what is it? Beezer? I grew up on Rage Against the Machine, and today's kids, my nephews, call me a conservative. Yeah, well, to be fair, Rage Against the Machine today is rage on behalf of the machine.
Yeah, that's right.
Man, isn't that funny? Because the reason I brought up the Offspring earlier about Hit That is because I was listening to one of their latest songs, and it's not overt, but it really does sound like they're pro-establishment these days. Maybe they always were. I mean, it's 2003, right? Or no, what year was Why Don't You? Oh, yeah, Hit That was 2003. That was
2003.
Well, how
Bush.
are we defining the machine?
The political establishment, what it's always been.
Because
Yeah,
so,
Trump
so
just
that's who they
kicked
claim
the
to be
door down.
raging against?
Oh, yeah, but
Over
they're...
Rage Against the Machine, that's what I'm saying.
Rage
like,
in the pocket
Didn't they
of
have
the
a
machine.
video that was like directed by Michael Moore
Yeah.
at one point with Rage, and they're on Wall Street and they're like
Boy.
protesting. They protested in front of the DNC at one point. They went down to Cuba. I mean, these guys were pretty, populist uprising against quote unquote the establishment.
Yeah.
We got Logan Culver says, clearly the culture shift happened when they fired up the Large Hadron Collider in 2008 and ripped a hole in our time continuum.
Yes.
Well,
That
you guys
also
should
happened-
watch Loki because that's what it's all about. Man.
You know what, you guys? We're up to 9.3K likes.
Not against that.
And that's great, but we agreed to 20,000.
Oh, we
So
did.
That's what I remember.
I
said
remember that
initially.
too.
I distinctly
20,000.
remember you saying that.
It was,
Yeah.
I said 20,000. I love you guys. Let's get us there. Come on. 20K
it.
likes. And watch the new FreedomToons videos. Do both. You could do both. And subscribe at FreedomToons. Man.
All right.
All right, Sonny
That'd
James
be great.
says, like
He's
they
looking
say,
at Tim like, how long will he allow me to do this?
Sonny James says, like they say, politics is religion for ugly people. Biosurveillance like vaccine passports forces the individual to buy technology. What better for disease capitalists than data mining you to train robots? Half the cost of immigrants. The pitch is VR. Oof.
Wow.
All right, let's see. Daniel Welch says, is the difference in states you described like Brave New World, sterile and dehumanized world state versus degenerate savage lands? I don't know.
Yeah, I think there's an extent where Brave New World actually came a little bit closer than Orwell, and I know that's
Yeah.
sort of not the quote unquote prevailing wisdom, but when you look at what Huxley proposed, it was this world. Not only was it advanced in terms of technology, but it was instant gratification
Yep.
of anything you wanted. It was free love, free sex, and this totally predates
Exactly.
like the counterculture. It's 1920s, I believe, 1925. He wrote that, and so he got a lot closer. And then so they fly over, quote unquote, the flyover states. But then you can go and they have these little platforms where you can land on and sort of look down to people living in like what we consider the Midwest now, and that's like a vacation to see how the savages, that's what they call them, the savages live.
Yeah, no, I mean, I completely agree with you. It's interesting. It actually gets more into the sexual politics, which is a huge part of why everything's fallen apart.
Oh,
here.
yeah, I mean, that's like half the book.
All right. The One Free Man says, would you die not for America as we know it, but for the America you know it could be?
So for the Papal States of America, because it could be that, and I would die for that.
I've seen so many people die feudively that I'm not really looking to throw myself away.
Yeah, I guess that's a complicated question. I mean, look, that's clearly a risk that my grandfather was willing to take.
I think-
He fought in the Second World War. I think there's something noble about that. I'm not a big fan of the industrial military complex or our current foreign policy, but if there was a good reason to go to war, I mean, I'm not going to sit here and say I'm so brave and macho I would absolutely go do it, but I definitely believe there are reasons which warrant fighting. For sure.
I mean, you know, as Patton once said, you know, the object of warfare is not to die for your country, but have the enemy die for his. That being said, you know, I know that I'm not someone who currently, and I said this before, I argued that I don't think that we are on a collision course with China. But that being said, should the CCP try? Trust me, I've been focused on these guys solely for about 15 years right now. I would know how to tear them apart within less than 18 months.
Don't say that on air. Disney will never hire you now. No.
Hedge Trimmer says, the mother of all short sells is upon us. The ape army owns the float by 93%. Is that for GameStop? We'll see what happens. That could be big.
I also did a cartoon about GameStop.
Right?
What's up?
Isn't Apes AMC?
I don't know.
It's just meme, I thought. Meme cryptos.
Yeah, meme cryptos. Or meme
So
stocks.
it's apes with this. That'd be all meme stocks.
So if you guys like meme stocks, I did a video called Game Stonks that you guys should also check out at FreedomToons.
Was that right?
You'd really enjoy it, yeah.
All right. Clef the Misfit says, Tim, I'm going to keep posting this till you read it. Please make a gorilla T-shirt in your honor with a beanie and lettuce hands.
Oh.
I bought AMC. Yeah, I bought back.
You're back in.
Yeah, for a while now.
Back on the train. All right.
Yeah, I woke up and I was like, I don't even have anything to invest in. I was like, AMC, I guess. Whatever.
Do it. Yeah, there are people that are moving on. If you click on Wall Street Bets, AMC isn't even like the hot thing right now anymore. The people have kind of moved on from it.
This is a hive. You know, it's a bee's nest.
But I haven't, by the way.
And
I have not.
This is a hive. And what they've realized is that when there's high short interest in a stock, it's guaranteed to go up.
Right.
Just hedge funds are like, we're going to tank the stock where I'll make money. They announce it, then everybody follows suit, and they do the opposite, and they're guaranteed to sell the stock at a higher price. It's a win. It's just absolutely win. So now the whole game is going to shift based on this new meta.
The firms are going to stop doing that. They should have kept it low key so they could keep taking advantage of these firms when they try to do it. Now that the word is out, they're just going to know it's too big of a risk to short.
Yep.
Let's see. Javon Cronin says, I love how Ian randomly gets mad in the middle of a sentence and chills out by the end. Always catches me off guard.
Dude, I am fire. Electric light.
It's true.
That's so trying to think of that.
It's a really short
Okay,
cycle.
Wrath4 says, more people died in 2020 alone from shoving foreign objects in their bums than people died from AR-15s in the past 5 years combined. Well, we should absolutely ban those things.
Are we debunking, or has that been bunked?
Yeah,
It is being bunked now. We can choose to accept the bunk, debunk, and then if we do debunk, then the other party has a chance to rebunk.
Okay.
Oh. Yeah, we should ban all those
Could
things.
always in-bunk.
All right, let's see. Let's do a couple more here. Ward Spo says, no drinks on the damn table ever. Few hundred to thousands in cards. I have stacks of irreplaceable cards. I get it. Oh yeah, we have like I've got an Alpha Bolt.
I like that card.
What is that worth? Like $1,000 these days?
Oh man.
Maybe.
I don't know. Maybe not that much.
Possibly.
But it was like $70 when I bought it. I think.
I'm gonna look it
a
up.
while ago.
So imagine if somebody just like knocks over their coffee or something.
Well, it's sealed in a special thing.
So that's the other.
Yeah, but I do have some cards that are worth like a lot. Like
crazy.
one of my deck has some like. I probably shouldn't say too much about the power of this deck, but it's got some really, really old, expensive cards in it.
Let's just say he had some collateral for that AMC stock he bought.
I went and I was like, I'm gonna leverage my Magic the Gathering deck, and they were like, whoa.
He went down to the bank. They're like, we don't have a vault big enough, safe enough to store that. Like, what are we?
Looks like the Alpha Lightning Bolt's about $500 now.
Oh, okay, $500. There you go. Wow. So apparently, the Magic the Gathering cards track higher, have a higher rate of return, a percentage of return than like the S&P 500.
It is raining.
Whoa. Wow.
Yeah, I heard that. I was
hear it,
whoa.
yeah, I hear
it. Rain?
Noise. Yeah, it's like in waves.
And guess who gets to drive home through that?
Oh, it'll
Hey,
be
if the power
okay.
goes out, it was nice doing the show with you guys.
Yeah, we made it. Yeah.
So let's just we'll do a couple more so we can get to that bonus segment.
Ian, use your abilities to keep us online.
You got it. Positive
All right.
energy displacing the clouds.
We do have
Right.
the reserve batteries. Goblin Hands says, Tim, as a truck driver, the truck driver shortage is a myth. They are pushing the autonomous trucks in. Also, the Chinese own the biggest pork company in the U.S.,
Interesting.
Smithfield. If they
Yes.
decide
Yeah,
they can shut
it's true.
us down easily.
Yeah.
Wow. Jamie Cagney says, how's your internet today? I have a Starlink set up to sell you if you want. Check out the jobs email. Can you write that
Ooh,
down?
Jamie. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
100%. I don't. Can you do that? Because we would absolutely love to get Starlink. We're on the waiting list. So they announced it's in our area. We paid for it. They said, now you just have to wait, first come, first serve. So it's like, yo, Elon, Does anybody who's watching know Elon? Be like, yo, hey Elon, can you send this guy? He's not doing a show. He needs Starlink. In the middle of nowhere. I also wonder, can you move the Starlink around? Because if they just give it to you, can't you just like take it and put it somewhere else? Use it somewhere else? All right. That storm is really, really bad.
Yeah,
So
wow.
we'll wrap things up. Make sure to follow us on Facebook and Instagram at Timcast IRL. You can share our videos on Facebook, help us grow the network, and then redirect people to timcast.com. Be a member. We're gonna have a hoot of a bonus segment coming up with all these crazy folks we got chilling out here. You can follow me personally at Timcast basically everywhere. Shows live Monday through Friday. Share the show. It really does help. Jack, you want to shout out anything?
Yeah, shout out to humanevents.com. We're taken to the CCP on a daily basis, as well as to the corrupt leaders of the United States government. Here today, we're going after the U.S. military today, a guy who just said a lot of things that he probably shouldn't have said, so we've scooped that, and he had to delete his Twitter account just before we came out as battalion commander. And also check out antifabook.com if you want to learn the truth about this organization. Never before published information about conversations from FBI Director Wray directly with President Trump. No one's got this stuff. We've got it through our reporting. Check it out, antifabook.com.
I make cartoons.
Yeah.
I think they're pretty good.
Go
you
watch
guys
the Fauci episode.
Watch the Fauci episode. You guys just got us.
It's actually pretty good.
Thank you. You guys just got us to 10,000 likes.
Oh, yeah.
It's half of what I asked for,
Oh.
but
It's not what they
it'll
promised.
do.
It's not what they
you
promised
guys
at all.
promised. You promised 20,000. So here's how you can make it up to me. I want you to go over to youtube.com/FreedomToons. We are at about 644,000 subs. I'm trying to get up to 650,000 subs.
Yes.
And I'm also trying to get you guys to watch our newest Fauci cartoon.
Watch
Please
the
do
Dr.
that.
Fauci episode with me, Tim Pool, as Dr. Fauci.
It really is Tim as Fauci. by
It
the
is
way. That's
Tim
not- that's
voice
not it.
People are saying they
Fauci.
didn't believe it. And
Yeah,
I'm
yeah,
like,
people are saying
but
they
I
didn't
do that
believe it,
voice
yeah.
all the time.
It sounded.
You gotta wear a mask because of the droplets.
It was because I was such a good director
It's
that I
true.
got the performance of your life out of you.
That's true.
And so everyone
more to
should
come.
go watch that, youtube.com/FreedomToons. It's called Dr. Fauci's Emails. It's very fun. We had a great time making it. You will all enjoy it. Go over there and sub. I love you.
Sure, yeah, you can follow me at crossland.net as well. But hey, send me that positive energy. Send that positive energy up into the skies above us to move those clouds like when oil hits water and you just see it fly, or when water hits oil or something like that.
Hopefully do that before I have to drive
Yeah,
home.
do that so Jack gets an
Please.
easy ride home.
Yeah, seriously, I have children.
Yes, definitely. Jack needs to get home in one piece. We want him to be safe. It's wild and crazy. I have driven in some of these storms. Both times I felt kind of like I was going to die. I was with Lauren Chen one day and I was with Seamus the next day, and it was freaking awful. You can't see anything, so I'm hoping it's cleared up by then. But you guys can follow me on Twitter at Sour Patch Lids. I would like to have more followers than Sour Patch Kids, so I'd really appreciate your help.
I thought you were going to say you wanted to have more followers than Seamus.
That's not.
well,
Yes.
That's not what
me-
she does on Twitter.
Oh, do I?
Sour
Yes.
Patch Kids is
Yes.
pulling away, though, aren't they?
Yeah.
What, they're what?
Sour Patch Kids is pulling away. I actually checked the other day.
Yeah, I know.
But
Well.
you actually are quite close to them.
I'm getting
That's
there.
people you wouldn't
Getting
realize.
there.
All right, everybody, make sure you go to timcast.com for the bonus segment with this crazy crew. It'll be up hopefully around 11 or so. That's when we usually put it up, and we'll see you all then.
Bye, guys.